Welcome back to Infidelity Tales Lab. We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Foundations. The Bellamy Hotel ballroom glittered with New York's elite, diamonds catching light under crystal chandeliers as waiters in immaculate uniforms navigated between guests balancing flutes of champagne. Marcus Reed stood by one of the marble columns, observing the charity gala's attendees with detached curiosity. At 34, he'd attended enough of these events to recognize the patterns, the careful social choreography, the performance of wealth and influence. His fingers absent-mindedly adjusted his bow tie, a gesture that betrayed his lingering discomfort in these settings despite his rising status in New York's architectural world. Marcus had designed 3 landmark buildings in Manhattan, each more innovative than the last, but he still felt the phantom weight of the second-hand clothes he'd worn through his youth in foster care. "Mr. Reed," a woman in a hotel uniform approached him. "Ms. Winters asked me to remind you that the presentation begins in 20 minutes. You're seated at table 3. Marcus nodded his thanks, taking a sip of his sparkling water. Grace Winters, the environmental journalist who had organized tonight's fundraiser for sustainable urban development, had been persistent in her invitation. "Your buildings breathe," she had told him on the phone. "People need to hear from the man who designs structures that give back to the environment instead of depleting it." He began making his way through the crowd toward his assigned table, nodding politely to acquaintances. The room quieted slightly as Howard Harlow entered with his entourage. Even among the wealthy, Harlow commanded attention, a real estate tycoon whose developments stretched across 3 continents, a man who had turned his father's modest construction company into an empire. Howard moved with the confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. Beside him walked a young woman in a midnight blue gown, her dark hair swept up elegantly, revealing a graceful neck adorned with sapphires that matched her eyes. She smiled politely at those who greeted her father, but Marcus noticed something reserved in her demeanor, a subtle withdrawal from the ostentatious display around her. He reached his table and discovered, with mild surprise, that his place card sat adjacent to one reading Vanessa Harlow. Before he could consider the implications, Howard's daughter herself appeared at the table. "You must be Marcus Reed," she said, extending her hand. Her voice was warm but composed, devoid of the affected tones many in her social circle adopted. "I've been hoping to meet you." Marcus shook her hand, noting the firmness of her grip. "The pleasure is mine, Ms. Harlow. Vanessa, please." She sat down, arranging her gown with practiced ease. "I toured your Meridian building last month. The integration of the vertical gardens with the office spaces was remarkable. You're interested in architecture?" Marcus asked, taking his seat beside her. "Environmental science, actually. I have a doctorate in sustainable urban ecosystems." She smiled at his surprised expression. "Did you expect me to say fashion or art history?" Marcus felt a flush of embarrassment at having made assumptions based on her appearance and family. "I apologize for my presumption." "No need. I'm used to it." She leaned slightly closer. "My father introduces me as his brilliant daughter with a useless degree. He doesn't see the point of studying sustainability when he could simply hire consultants to greenwash his developments." The candor of her criticism toward her father caught Marcus off guard. "Yet you're here supporting an environmental charity." "Small rebellions," Vanessa said with a slight shrug. "I convinced him that the tax write-off and networking opportunities justified the donation." Their conversation flowed with unexpected ease through dinner. Vanessa questioned him about his design philosophy with genuine interest, and Marcus found himself explaining concepts he rarely discussed outside his firm. His belief that buildings should function as living entities within their environments, contributing rather than consuming. "That's why I incorporated water reclamation systems into the Meridian," he explained. "The building captures and purifies rainwater, reducing municipal water usage by 60% while maintaining interior garden spaces that improve air quality and employee well-being. All while looking stunning," Vanessa added. "Form and function in perfect harmony." "You sound like an architect." Marcus said with a smile. Perhaps in another life. She glanced toward her father, engaged in conversation with a group of investors. Some paths aren't available to all of us, regardless of interest or aptitude. As the evening progressed and Grace introduced Marcus as one of the speakers, he felt Vanessa's attentive gaze from the table. His presentation on sustainable urban development, usually delivered with professional detachment, felt more impassioned as he described his vision for cities that could heal environmental damage rather than contribute to it. After the applause, as guests mingled over dessert, Howard Harlow approached Marcus with Vanessa reluctantly trailing behind. Impressive speech, Reed, Howard said, his handshake aggressive in its firmness. Idealistic, but impressive. Vanessa hasn't stopped talking about your work. His tone carried a hint of dismissal despite the complimentary words. Your daughter has impressive knowledge of environmental systems, Marcus replied. Her insights on biophilic design principles were fascinating. Howard's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. Yes, well, Vanessa has always had academic interests. Speaking of fascinating, I understand you grew up in the foster system. Quite a journey to where you are now. The deliberate mention of his background, presented as conversational but clearly intended to establish difference, was a familiar tactic Marcus had encountered before. I was fortunate to have dedicated teachers who encouraged my interest in design, he answered evenly. Father, Vanessa interjected, didn't you mention wanting to speak with Senator Mitchell about the Hudson Yards zoning regulations? I believe I just saw him near the bar. Howard checked his watch. Indeed. Good meeting you, Reed. Perhaps we'll cross paths at future events. He turned to Vanessa. Don't be too late, dear. We have the foundation meeting in the morning. As Howard departed, Vanessa's posture relaxed slightly. I apologize for my father. He has a talent for reminding people of their place in his perceived hierarchy. No apology necessary, Marcus assured her. I've encountered far worse in this industry. Still, she hesitated, then retrieved a business card from her clutch. I'm working on a research project examining the impact of integrated green spaces on urban microclimates. I'd value your professional perspective if you have time. Marcus accepted the card, noting the university affiliation rather than her father's company. I'd be happy to contribute, he said, offering his own card in return. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, a momentary contact that somehow felt significant. Vanessa's expression softened. Thank you for your insights tonight, Marcus. It's refreshing to meet someone who builds with purpose beyond profit. 3 days later, they met for coffee to discuss a research. A week after that, dinner to continue the conversation. By their third meeting, the pretense of professional consultation had given way to mutual attraction neither could deny. 6 months into their relationship, Marcus invited Vanessa to the opening of his newest project, a community arts center in Brooklyn built almost entirely from reclaimed materials. The building transformed an abandoned warehouse into a light-filled space where studios, galleries, and performance areas flowed organically into one another. This is extraordinary, Vanessa said as they walked through the main atrium, her hand in his. You've preserved the industrial character while creating something entirely new. That was the challenge, Marcus agreed, honoring what came before while building something better for what comes next. A photographer from an architecture magazine approached. Can we get a photo of you and Ms. Harlow for the article? As the camera captured them standing before the atrium's living wall, thousands of plants growing on what was once a factory wall, Marcus realized the image symbolized their relationship, new life flourishing in unexpected places. The photograph appeared in several publications. 3 days later, Marcus received a call from Howard Harlow's office requesting a meeting. Howard's corner office in Harlow Tower offered panoramic views of Central Park, the space designed to intimidate with its scale and elevation. Marcus sat across from Howard's massive desk, refusing to be diminished by the staging. Let's be direct, Howard began without preamble. You've been seeing my daughter for several months now. Yes, Marcus confirmed, though I imagine you knew that before the photographs were published. Howard's lips thinned. Vanessa has always had a rebellious streak. Dating someone from your background would certainly qualify as rebellion. Is that how you view it? Marcus asked calmly. As rebellion rather than genuine connection? What I view, Howard said, leaning forward, is a self-made architect whose talent has earned him recognition, but who remains several social strata removed from the Harlow family. Vanessa was raised with certain expectations, which she's an adult capable of accepting or rejecting. Marcus interrupted. With respect, Mr. Harlow, if you invited me here to warn me away from your daughter, you're wasting both our time. Howard studied him for a moment, then gave a short laugh devoid of humor. Directness. At least that's refreshing. He opened a desk drawer and removed a folder. I had you thoroughly investigated, of course. 14 foster homes between ages 7 and 18. Scholarship to Cornell. Worked 3 jobs through college. Built your firm from nothing. Impressive. Marcus maintained neutral expression despite the invasion of privacy. Was there a question in there? What are your intentions toward my daughter? Howard asked, closing the folder. I love her, Marcus answered simply. Beyond that, our relationship is between Vanessa and me. Nothing in this world is that simple, Mr. Reed, especially when it involves the Harlow name. Howard stood and walked to the window. Prove yourself worthy of her, and perhaps I'll reconsider my opposition. Marcus rose. I don't need to prove myself to you, Mr. Harlow. Only to Vanessa. Then prove yourself in my world, Howard challenged, turning back to face him. The Dalton Corporation is seeking an architect for their new headquarters, a sustainable skyscraper that will define Chicago's skyline for generations. They're considering several firms, including yours and 2 others I personally recommended. Win that commission, and you demonstrate you can operate at our level. I don't need your approval to continue seeing Vanessa, Marcus stated firmly. No, Howard agreed. But you'll never truly be accepted by her full world without it. Consider it a gesture of good faith that I'm telling you about the opportunity at all. The Dalton Commission became Marcus's obsession over the following months. His relationship with Vanessa deepened despite Howard's disapproval, but Marcus recognized the truth in Howard's assessment. Without acceptance from her family, they would always face an uphill battle. His design for the Dalton headquarters incorporated revolutionary energy systems, integrated wind turbines disguised as architectural elements, and a double-skin facade that regulated temperature while generating power. When the presentation day arrived, Vanessa squeezed his hand before he entered the boardroom. They'd be fools not to choose you, she whispered. Marcus won the commission. The announcement dominated architectural news, with critics hailing the design as revolutionary and defining a new standard for sustainable urban design. Howard Harlow's congratulatory message arrived the same day, a handwritten note that read simply, adequately impressive. Dinner at our home this Sunday. The Harlow estate sprawled across 3 acres in Greenwich, Connecticut, the mansion a tasteful display of old money and influence. Marcus and Vanessa arrived together, her hand tight around his as they approached the entrance. He'll behave, she assured him. Mother will make sure of it. Eleanor Harlow proved to be the perfect counterbalance to her husband's brusque manner, greeting Marcus warmly and engaging him in genuine conversation throughout dinner. Howard maintained civil tones, though his occasional barbs about new money architects penetrated the polite veneer. After dinner, Howard invited Marcus to his study, ostensibly to show him a collection of architectural drawings from the 1920s. Once the door closed, however, his demeanor shifted. The Dalton Commission is significant, Howard acknowledged, pouring himself a scotch without offering one to Marcus. You've proven your professional capabilities. But that's not enough, Marcus surmised. Nothing is ever enough in our world, Reed. That's the first lesson. Howard swirled his drink. Vanessa tells me you've discussed marriage. We have. And you believe you can provide for her appropriately? Maintain the lifestyle she's accustomed to. Marcus met his gaze directly. I believe Vanessa and I will build a life together based on mutual respect and shared values, not material possessions. But yes, my firm is successful in growing. Howard's laugh held genuine amusement this time. Mutual respect and shared values. How refreshingly naive. He set his glass down. Let me be clear. I don't believe you're the right match for my daughter. Your backgrounds are incompatible, your social connections limited, and your understanding of our world elementary at best. Yet here we are, Marcus observed. Indeed, because Vanessa has made her choice clear, and unlike some fathers, I recognize when opposition becomes counterproductive. Howard's expression hardened. I will accept your engagement, publicly, even enthusiastically. The Harlow name will open doors for your firm that talent alone never could. But understand this, you will never truly be one of us. You'll be tolerated, showcased when convenient, but always an outsider wearing borrowed status. Marcus maintained his composure. I'm marrying Vanessa, not your social circle. They're inseparable, Howard replied. Remember that when you find yourself navigating waters far deeper than anything in your experience. He extended his hand. Welcome to the family, Marcus. May you prove more adaptable than I anticipate. The engagement announcement appeared in the New York Times the following Sunday. The subsequent months dissolved into a whirlwind of planning orchestrated primarily by Eleanor Harlow, who approached the wedding as she might a diplomatic summit and careful attention to appearances. Vanessa insisted on incorporating sustainable elements, potted trees instead of cut flowers, locally sourced organic catering, digital invitations rather than paper. Small victories she celebrated with Marcus privately. Mother nearly fainted when I suggested wildflower seed packets as favors, she told him, curled against his side in bed. But she conceded when I reminded her how innovative and forward-thinking it would appear. You're becoming quite the strategist, Marcus observed, stroking her hair. I learned from the master. Vanessa's voice carried a hint of sadness. Growing up with Howard Harlow teaches you to frame everything as an advantage. Even rebellion must be strategically deployed. Their wedding day arrived in June, the ceremony held in the gardens of the Harlow estate. 400 guests witnessed their vows, though Marcus recognized barely a tenth of the attendees. His side held a small contingent. Samuel Chun, his oldest friend from the foster system. Diana Wells, a client whose women's shelter he had designed pro bono. A handful of colleagues and mentors who had supported his journey. During the reception, Howard rose to deliver his toast, crystal glass catching the light as he addressed the gathering. Today, two families of distinct traditions joined together. He began, his public persona impeccably charming. The Harlows, with our generations of building America's skylines, and Marcus, whose remarkable talent has risen from humble beginnings to reshape how we think about architecture. He turned toward Marcus. Some might say you're a lucky man, Marcus, joining our family. But I recognize that Vanessa is the fortunate one, having found someone who sees the world with such vision and integrity. The words were perfectly calibrated, acknowledging Marcus's background while emphasizing the disparity, praising his abilities while subtly claiming credit for recognizing them, offering welcome while establishing hierarchy. Marcus nodded in acknowledgement, understanding the subtext beneath the polished surface. Later, as guests danced and celebrated, Marcus noticed Vanessa in close conversation with a man he vaguely recognized, tall, conventionally handsome, with a confident posture of inherited privilege. Their exchange appeared intense until they noticed Marcus approaching, at which point both adopted casual smiles. Marcus, Vanessa said, her tone overly bright. Have you met Jack Bennett? Our families have known each other forever. Jack's father and mine were roommates at Yale. We haven't had the pleasure, Marcus said, offering his hand. Jack's handshake was firm, his smile practiced. Congratulations on your marriage and that Chicago commission. Dad says it's quite the accomplishment. Bennett Development, Marcus realized aloud. Your family's company was one of the other finalists. All water under the bridge now, Jack assured him with a wave. Best design won, fair and square. Vanessa was just reminiscing about our childhood sailing adventures. Jack taught me to sail when I was 12, Vanessa explained, after I nearly capsized his father's yacht. Good times, Jack agreed, his eyes lingering on Vanessa a moment too long. I should congratulate your parents. If you'll excuse me. As Jack departed, Marcus turned to Vanessa. Old friend. Something like that, she replied, watching Jack weave through the crowd. Our families expected us to marry eventually. The perfect merger of compatible empires. And yet you chose the foster kid with the drafting pencils, Marcus said lightly, though a note of question hung in the words. Vanessa turned to him, her expression softening as she placed a hand against his cheek. I chose the man who builds with purpose and vision, not for profit and prestige. She kissed him gently. I chose you, Marcus. Never doubt that. 5 years passed in a blur of accomplishments and adjustments. Marcus's firm expanded to 30 employees, with offices in New York, Chicago, and San Francisco. His designs won international recognition for innovation in sustainable architecture. Vanessa completed her research project and began consulting for environmental nonprofits, carefully maintaining independence from both her father's company and Marcus's firm. Their marriage found its rhythm despite the occasional friction caused by their different backgrounds. Marcus learned to navigate the social expectations of Vanessa's world: charity boards, gala committees, country club memberships, while Vanessa embraced the more grounded approach to life Marcus preferred in their private time. Howard maintained his public support, while privately continuing to remind Marcus of his outsider status. At family gatherings, he would inevitably reference Marcus's background, always framed as admiration for how far he'd come, yet serving as a persistent reminder of difference. The announcement that Marcus's firm had been selected to design an eco-friendly skyscraper in Dubai, a landmark project worth millions, marked a professional pinnacle. To celebrate, Marcus planned a luxury family vacation to the Maldives, booking overwater villas at an exclusive resort at a cost of $37,000. It's excessive, Vanessa noted when he showed her the reservation details in their Manhattan apartment. It's celebration, Marcus corrected. The Dubai contract will transform a firm. Besides, your father always measures these things in dollars spent. Vanessa gave him a searching look. Since when do you care what my father measures? I don't, Marcus replied too quickly. But he's been telling your mother for years that my firm is playing at success rather than achieving it. Let him see what playing at success can afford. You don't need to prove anything to him, Vanessa said, her hand resting on his arm. It's not about proving something. Marcus moved to the window. It's about celebrating on our terms, in a way even Howard can't diminish. Vanessa seemed unconvinced, but didn't press further. Who will you invite? Just my parents. I thought your brother too, if he's available. Samuel. Maybe Diana. Marcus turned back to her. Unless you wanted to keep it just family? No, that sounds perfect. Vanessa smiled, but something flickered behind her eyes that Marcus couldn't identify. I'll call Mom tomorrow. The evening before their departure, Marcus was working late in his home office, finalizing details for the Dubai project before their vacation. Vanessa had left her laptop on his desk while taking a shower. When the screen lit up with an incoming message, Marcus glanced at it instinctively. The notification displayed briefly before the screen darkened again. JB, resort confirmed. Arriving Thursday. Howard arranged everything. Delete these messages. Marcus froze, the implications of those 2 sentences detonating in his mind. JB, Jack Bennett. Thursday, the day after their own arrival at the Maldives resort. Howard arranged everything. He glanced toward the bathroom door, hearing the shower still running. With careful movements, he woke Vanessa's laptop again. The screen requested a password. Marcus tried her usual password, their anniversary date, but was denied access. A cold weight settled in his stomach as he realized Vanessa used a different password for this device. The implications multiplied. Separate password. Encrypted messages. Secret arrangements with Jack and Howard. Marcus closed the laptop precisely as he had found it and returned to his desk, mind racing. He called Samuel. I need Diana's number, he said when his friend answered. Diana Wells? It's almost midnight, man. It's important, Sam. Please. Samuel provided the number without further questions, a testament to their decades of friendship. Marcus dialed immediately. Diana answered on the 4th ring, her voice alert despite the hour. Marcus? Is everything all right? I need your help, he said quietly, eyes on the bathroom door. Professionally. It's sensitive. The shelter expansion plans? Diana asked, confusion evident in her tone. No, your other expertise. Before becoming an advocate for domestic violence survivors, Diana had been a private investigator specializing in infidelity cases. I need surveillance. Discreet. Beginning tomorrow. A pause stretched between them. You're sure about this? Diana finally asked. I'm not sure of anything, Marcus admitted. That's why I need you. Text me the details, Diana said firmly. I'll handle it. As Marcus ended the call, the bathroom door opened. Vanessa emerged in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel. Work call? She asked, noticing his phone. Last-minute details for the Dubai presentation. He lied smoothly, watching her face for any sign of deception. Just making sure everything's handled while we're away. Vanessa smiled, retrieving her laptop from his desk. Always the thorough one. That's why they chose your design. She kissed his cheek. Coming to bed soon? In a few minutes, he promised. As she left the room, Marcus stared at the space where her laptop had been, the architect in him already recognizing the first hairline crack in what he had believed was a solid foundation. Chapter 2. Cracks in the facade. The seaplane descended toward the Maldivian atoll, turquoise water stretching to the horizon in all directions. Marcus watched the approaching resort through the window, its overwater villas extending from the island like the spokes of a wheel. Beside him, Vanessa dozed, her head resting against his shoulder. Across the aisle, Howard and Eleanor Harlow maintained polite conversation with Marcus's brother-in-law, Richard, though Howard's occasional glances at his watch betrayed his impatience. Almost there, Marcus said as Vanessa stirred. It's breathtaking. She blinked awake, orienting herself before peering out the window. It's like something from a dream, she agreed, though her enthusiasm seemed measured. The aircraft touched down on the water with a gentle splash, taxiing toward the resort's arrival pavilion. As they disembarked, resort staff greeted them with cold towels and welcome drinks, the general manager personally escorting them to their villas. Mr. and Mrs. Reed, you've been upgraded to our premium overwater residence, he informed them with practiced deference. Mr. Harlow, your beachfront compound is prepared as requested. Howard nodded, as if the preferential treatment were expected. The additional guest we discussed? All arranged. Yes, sir. Mr. Bennett's villa is adjacent to yours, as specified. He arrives tomorrow morning. Marcus felt Vanessa tense beside him. He maintained a neutral expression, the confirmation of his suspicions landing like a physical blow that he refused to show. Jack's joining us? He asked, his tone casual despite the acid churning in his stomach. Wonderful surprise, isn't it? Howard replied with manufactured enthusiasm. When I mentioned our trip, Jack happened to mention he'd been wanting to visit the Maldives. Perfect opportunity to include an old family friend. Perfect, Marcus echoed, meeting Howard's gaze directly. Though a heads-up might have been considerate. Last-minute arrangement, Howard dismissed with a wave. Jack only confirmed yesterday. The lie hung between them, Howard's eyes challenging Marcus to dispute it. Instead, Marcus turned to the manager. We'd like to see our villa now, please. Their residence, a massive structure built over the crystal-clear lagoon, offered panoramic views through glass floor panels and retractable walls. A private infinity pool overlooked the ocean, with steps leading directly into the sea from their expansive deck. Will this be satisfactory? The manager asked, gesturing to the luxurious surroundings. It's beautiful, Vanessa said, moving to the edge of the deck to gaze at the water below. Perfect, Marcus confirmed. Thank you. Once alone, Marcus observed Vanessa's demeanor, the slight tension in her shoulders, the way she avoided extended eye contact. She moved about the villa with restless energy, unpacking items that could have easily waited. Surprised about Jack? He asked finally, breaking the silence between them. Vanessa hesitated briefly before continuing to arrange items in a drawer. Father always did prefer keeping Jack close. They share business interests. And you? Marcus pressed. Do you prefer keeping Jack close too? She turned to face him, her expression carefully composed. What exactly are you asking, Marcus? I'm asking if you knew he was coming. Marcus clarified, watching her closely. No, she answered without hesitation, though I'm not entirely surprised. Father has always treated Jack like the son he wished Richard had been. The potential truth of the statement gave Marcus pause. Richard Harlow, 5 years Vanessa's senior, had rejected the family business to become a literature professor, a choice Howard never forgave. "It doesn't bother you?" Marcus continued. "Your father inviting someone without consulting us? On what was supposed to be our celebration?" "Of course it bothers me," Vanessa replied, a flash of genuine irritation crossing her features. "But this is how Howard operates. He establishes control through these little power plays." She approached Marcus, placing her hands on his chest. "Don't let him ruin this for us. This is your moment. The Dubai contract, this beautiful place. We don't have to spend every minute with them." Her reasoning was sound, her touch familiar and comforting. Yet Marcus couldn't dismiss the notification he'd seen, the secretive communication between Vanessa and Jack. He covered her hands with his own. "You're right," he said, deciding to observe rather than confront. "Let's enjoy our first day before everyone arrives." They spent the afternoon snorkeling above the reef adjacent to their villa, vibrant fish darting between coral formations below them. Vanessa pointed out species she recognized from her environmental studies, her genuine enthusiasm for the marine ecosystem temporarily dissolving the tension between them. Dinner that evening took place in a private pavilion on the beach, the resort staff having arranged a memorable welcome experience. Howard dominated the conversation, discussing business developments and connections with the casual arrogance of someone accustomed to controlling every situation. "The Dubai project will put your firm on the map internationally, Marcus," Howard observed, swirling his wine. "Though I imagine Vanessa's environmental connections helped secure Rajiv Patel's interest. He's always been partial to sustainability initiatives, especially when championed by attractive women." "Father," Vanessa warned quietly. "What?" "It's a compliment," Howard insisted. "Using every advantage is simply good business." Marcus's design won the contract. Eleanor interjected, offering a diplomatic smile. The Patel Group specifically cited the integrated solar components in their announcement. Of course, Howard agreed insincerely. "Marcus's talent is undisputable. I merely observe that connections open doors that talent alone cannot." "An interesting theory," Marcus replied evenly. "Though in my experience, genuine innovation speaks for itself, while connections without substance eventually reveal their emptiness." Howard's smile tightened fractionally. Philosophy from an architect. How charming. He turned to his son. "Richard, how goes the battle to make undergraduates appreciate literature they'd rather not read?" The conversation shifted, but the underlying current remained. Howard subtly undermining Marcus's achievements, positioning them as derivative of Harlow influence rather than earned through merit. After dinner, as they walked along the beach back to their respective villas, Richard fell in his step beside Marcus. "Don't let him get to you," he advised quietly. "He does this to everyone, including his own children." "I noticed," Marcus replied, "though he seems to have a particular enthusiasm for reminding me of my place." Richard gave a rueful laugh. "You represent everything he secretly fears, self-made success that didn't require his approval or connections. He'll never stop trying to recategorize your achievements as somehow dependent on the Harlow name." "Why does Vanessa tolerate it?" Marcus asked, watching his wife walking ahead with Eleanor. Richard considered the question carefully. Vanessa learned early that direct opposition to Howard is futile. She developed subtler forms of resistance. He paused. "Don't mistake her strategic compliance for agreement. She's playing a longer game than any of us." The insight offered temporary reassurance, though it failed to explain the secret communications with Jack. Marcus thanked Richard before rejoining Vanessa for the walk to their villa. That night, while Vanessa slept beside him, Marcus lay awake watching the moon's reflection ripple across the ceiling as the water beneath their villa moved with the tide. The gentle rhythm that should have been soothing instead marked the seconds passing toward Jack Bennett's arrival and whatever truth it would reveal. Morning brought perfect weather and Jack Bennett, arriving via seaplane just before breakfast. Marcus watched from their deck as Jack was escorted to his villa near the Harlow's compound, noting the confident stride, the easy charm as he greeted staff, the designer luggage that matched his carefully cultivated image of success. "Jack's here," Marcus mentioned casually when Vanessa emerged from the bathroom in her swimsuit. She paused almost imperceptibly before reaching for her cover-up. "I suppose Father will want us all to have breakfast together then." "Probably," Marcus agreed, observing her closely. "You look beautiful this morning." "Thank you." She kissed him briefly before moving toward the door. "Shall we head over? Better to control the timing than have Father send someone to fetch us." The breakfast pavilion overlooked the lagoon, the table already occupied by the Harlow family when Marcus and Vanessa arrived. Jack stood as they approached, his smile broadening at the sight of Vanessa. "There she is," he exclaimed with exaggerated warmth. "Still the most beautiful Harlow by far." "It's Reed now," Marcus corrected pleasantly, extending his hand. "Good to see you again, Jack. Quite the coincidence, you joining our family celebration." Jack's handshake was firm, his smile never wavering. "Howard insisted once he heard I was considering a Maldives trip myself. Said it would be ridiculous for us to be here separately." He turned to Vanessa, embracing her briefly. "You look spectacular, as always. Marriage clearly agrees with you." "As does success with you," Vanessa replied, stepping back to Marcus's side. "Father mentioned Bennett Development secured the Singapore waterfront project." "We did indeed," Jack confirmed proudly. "Breaking ground next month." Perhaps Marcus could offer some sustainable design tips for the public spaces. The suggestion, positioning Marcus as consultant rather than peer, was subtle but deliberate. Howard nodded approvingly from his seat. "I'm sure Marcus would be happy to share insights," Howard said. "After all, we're practically family now." "I appreciate the thought," Marcus replied smoothly, "but my firm is focused exclusively on our current projects, including the Dubai Tower. Consulting would present conflict of interest concerns." Jack's expression flickered with what might have been irritation before recalibrating to affable understanding. Of course. Just a thought." Throughout breakfast, Marcus noted the familiar dynamics between Jack and the Harlows, the shared references to past events, the insider jokes, the comfortable rapport of people who had grown up in the same privileged circles. Howard treated Jack with a paternal pride notably absent in his interactions with Marcus, making comments about watching this boy grow into a formidable businessman and always knowing Jack would make his mark. More tellingly, Marcus observed the subtle exchanges between Jack and Vanessa. Glances held a moment too long, the careful maintenance of physical distance that seemed deliberately calculated, the way their conversation flowed with the ease of extensive private history. "I've arranged a diving excursion for this afternoon," Howard announced as breakfast concluded. "The resort has access to a remarkable reef system just 20 minutes by boat." "Sounds wonderful," Eleanor agreed. "Who's joining?" "I assumed everyone," Howard replied, looking around the table. "Unless someone is afraid of sharks?" His gaze lingered on Marcus. "I've been diving since college," Marcus answered the unspoken challenge. "The sharks don't concern me nearly as much as what swims in shallower waters." The double meaning hung between them briefly before Howard laughed. "Excellent. We leave at 1 o'clock." The diving excursion provided Marcus with ample opportunity to observe the interactions between Jack and Vanessa. On the boat ride to the reef, they sat apart, Vanessa beside Marcus, Jack engaged in conversation with Richard. But once in the water, their behavior shifted subtly. Despite diving as a group, Marcus noticed Jack frequently positioning himself near Vanessa, directing her attention to specific coral formations or marine life with a familiarity that suggested intimacy. When they surfaced briefly between dives, Jack helped Vanessa adjust her equipment with unnecessary touches to her shoulders and back. Most revealing was their underwater communication, using hand signals that went beyond standard diving gestures, an apparent private language developed through shared experience. At one point, Jack made a motion that caused Vanessa to laugh, bubbles streaming from her regulator. By the time they returned to the resort, Marcus's suspicions had crystallized into near certainty. The familiarity between Jack and Vanessa transcended old friendship, carrying the unmistakable current of romantic connection, past or present. As the group dispersed to prepare for dinner, Marcus checked his phone and found a message from Diana. Initial report ready. Secure link in your email. Call when private. In their villa, while Vanessa showered, Marcus retreated to the deck with his phone and called Diana. Tell me, he said without preamble when she answered. You were right to be suspicious, Diana replied, her voice professionally detached. I've been monitoring electronic communications between the parties you identified. The encryption was sophisticated but not impenetrable. And Marcus prompted, his heartbeat accelerating. There's an ongoing relationship between your wife and Jack Bennett, Diana confirmed. Based on a message history I've recovered, it's been active for approximately 3 years. The timeline hit Marcus like a physical blow. 3 years, more than half their marriage. He gripped the railing, steadying himself. There's more, Diana continued. Howard Harlow has been actively facilitating their meetings. The pattern suggests he's been encouraging the relationship since before your marriage to Vanessa. Encouraging an affair? Marcus clarified, his voice barely controlled. The communications indicate that Howard views Jack as a more suitable partner for his daughter, Diana explained. He appears to have been maintaining you as the public son-in-law, while grooming Jack as the eventual replacement. Replacement, Marcus repeated, the word bitter on his tongue. Marcus, Diana hesitated. The messages also reveal that Howard and Jack have been systematically accessing your design concepts through Vanessa. They've been documenting your work methodologies and innovation processes. The betrayal expanded exponentially, professional now, as well as personal. Marcus closed his eyes, recalling countless evenings when Vanessa had asked about his projects, shown interest in his design process, offered to organize his home office. I've compiled everything into a secure file, Diana said, including photographs from their previous meetings over the past year. It's comprehensive, Marcus. I'm sorry. Send it all, Marcus instructed. His voice steadying as shock gave way to cold clarity. And Diana? Thank you. When the call ended, Marcus remained on the deck, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of orange and crimson. The beauty surrounding him stood in stark contrast to the ugliness he had discovered. Behind him, he heard Vanessa emerge from the bathroom. Marcus? We should start getting ready for dinner. She approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. Howard's birthday dinner, remember? He'll be insufferable if we're late. Marcus turned to face her, studying the woman he had believed was his partner in all things. How expertly she had maintained the deception, playing both sides against an unseen middle. The architect in him almost admired the structural precision of the betrayal. You go ahead, he said, maintaining remarkable composure. I need to make a quick work call about the Dubai project. I'll join you in 15 minutes. Vanessa nodded, accepting the explanation without question. Don't be too long. You know how Father gets about punctuality. I wouldn't dream of disappointing Howard, Marcus replied. Especially not tonight. As Vanessa dressed, Marcus reviewed the files Diana had sent, each image and message confirming what he now understood was an elaborate deception orchestrated by Howard from the beginning. A plan designed to extract Marcus's intellectual property while maintaining the public fiction of the perfect Harlow daughter who had married a self-made success story. By the time they left for dinner, Marcus had downloaded everything to his phone and formulated his response. The evidence Diana had compiled included not only proof of the affair, but also documentation of how Jack's company had been systematically patenting modified versions of Marcus's designs. The private dining room overlooked the ocean, its glass walls revealing the moonlit water surrounding them. Howard sat at the head of the table, holding court as birthday celebrant and self-appointed patriarch. Jack occupied the place beside Vanessa, their seating apparently predetermined by Howard's arrangements. Throughout the meal, Marcus observed the subtle interplay between the conspirators. Howard's satisfied glances at Jack and Vanessa seated together. Jack's proprietary attitude toward Vanessa manifested in casual touches and intimate asides. Vanessa's practiced performance as devoted wife while maintaining secret communication with her lover. When the dessert course arrived, Howard raised his glass for a toast, his expression smug with self-satisfaction. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me in paradise to celebrate another year of success, he he began. Particularly Marcus, whose recent achievements have brought additional prestige to our extended family circle. He fixed Marcus with a pointed stare, though we must acknowledge that much of that success came after joining our family. You've always been a failure until we carried you, haven't you, Marcus? The foster boy made good through Harlow connections. Marcus noted Vanessa's slight smirk at her father's backhanded compliment, the brief glance she exchanged with Jack. In that moment, any lingering doubt evaporated. "You'll excuse me for a moment," Marcus said, rising from his chair. "I need to retrieve something from our villa, a special birthday gift for Howard." "Can it wait until after dessert?" Eleanor asked, discomfort evident in her expression. "I'm afraid not," Marcus replied pleasantly. "It's particularly timely. I won't be long." He returned 15 minutes later, a manila envelope in hand, to find the group enjoying their desserts and champagne. Howard's expression upon seeing him carried a hint of irritation at the interruption of his celebration. "Ah, Marcus returns with the mysterious gift," Howard announced. "This must be quite something to warrant abandoning my birthday toast." "It certainly is," Marcus agreed, remaining standing. "In fact, I'd like to offer a toast of my own, if you'll indulge me." The table fell silent, all eyes turning to Marcus as he raised his glass. "To Howard Harlow," he began, his voice steady. "A man who taught me the true meaning of family. That's a construct to be manipulated for personal gain rather than a bond to be honored." Confusion rippled around the table. Howard's expression darkened. "Marcus, I'm not sure what." "I'm not finished," Marcus interrupted calmly. To Jack Bennett, who demonstrated that friendship and loyalty are flexible concepts when opportunity presents itself. He turned to Vanessa, and to my wife, who perfected the art of betrayal by making it seem like love. Silence descended, heavy and absolute. Marcus placed the envelope on the table and slid it toward Howard. "My gift to you, Howard. Divorce papers for your daughter, and photographic evidence of the affair you've been facilitating between Vanessa and Jack for the past 3 years." As Howard opened the envelope, Marcus removed his phone and displayed the first image. Vanessa and Jack embracing in a hotel room, dated 8 months earlier. He swiped to reveal more photographs, messages, and documents demonstrating the systematic theft of his intellectual property. "Quite the operation you've been running," Marcus continued, his tone conversational despite the devastating content he revealed. "Using Vanessa to extract my design innovations while maintaining the public fiction of the perfect marriage. Preparing Jack as the replacement once you'd secured everything valuable from me." "This is absurd," Howard blustered, though his face had paled considerably. "These could be doctored." "They're not," Marcus stated flatly. "Diana Wells is very thorough in her investigations. The same Diana who documents domestic abuse cases and corporate espionage." Vanessa remained frozen, her champagne glass suspended halfway to her lips. Jack shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between Howard and the exit. "Did you really think I wouldn't discover it?" Marcus asked, focusing on Vanessa. "Or did you simply believe I was so grateful for your manufactured love that I'd overlook anything?" "Marcus," Vanessa finally spoke, her voice barely audible. "It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think," he corrected her. "A 3-year affair orchestrated by your father, facilitated by stolen access to my work, documented in exquisite detail by Diana's investigation." Howard recovered his composure, straightening in his chair. "You've made your dramatic point. Now, perhaps we should discuss this like rational adults." "There's nothing to discuss," Marcus interrupted. "The papers are straightforward. Vanessa gets nothing from me. No alimony, no property, no continued access to my firm or designs. The evidence of corporate espionage should provide adequate leverage against any claims." "You'll regret this humiliation for the rest of your life," Howard growled, his facade of civility evaporating. "I'll destroy everything you've built." Marcus regarded him with unexpected calm. "You're welcome to try, Howard. But unlike your daughter's affection, my success is genuine. It exists independent of your manipulation." He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at the stunned faces around the table. "Enjoy the rest of your birthday, Howard." Consider this my parting gift. The truth you thought you could control. As Marcus walked away from the private dining room, he heard the eruption of voices behind him. Howard's angry demands, Eleanor's attempts at mediation, Richard's stunned questions, Jack's defensive protestations, and Vanessa's sobs. He continued walking, his steps carrying him away from the elaborate deception that had been his marriage and toward whatever reality awaited beyond it. Chapter 3. Blueprint for Revenge. The Manhattan apartment felt cavernous in its emptiness. Marcus stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, the city lights blurring through the rain, streaking down the glass. 3 weeks had passed since the Maldives confrontation. 3 weeks of lawyers, damage control, and the systematic dismantling of a life he had built with Vanessa. She had returned to her family's Connecticut estate, taking only personal items and leaving behind the carefully curated artifacts of their shared existence. The divorce proceedings had begun with expected hostility. Howard's legal team immediately filing motions challenging the prenuptial agreement and claiming Vanessa's essential contributions to Marcus's designs. His phone vibrated on the marble countertop. The screen displayed Rajiv Patel Dubai Project with a Dubai number. Marcus exhaled slowly before answering. "Rajiv, good to hear from you," he greeted, maintaining professional composure despite anticipating what would come. "Marcus, I wish this were a pleasant call," Rajiv began, his accented voice carrying reluctant authority. "There have been concerns raised about proceeding with your firm for the Tower project. Concerns raised by Howard Harlow," Marcus stated rather than asked. A pause stretched across the international connection. "I cannot comment on specific influences, but yes, certain prominent figures in development circles have suggested potential issues with your firm's stability and future viability. The designs remain superior to anything else proposed," Marcus reminded him. "The sustainability innovations alone would set new standards for the region." "The designs are indeed exceptional," Rajiv agreed, "which is why this situation is particularly unfortunate." He hesitated. "Marcus, I value our professional relationship, so I will speak frankly. The Harlow family has initiated a whisper campaign suggesting your firm faces bankruptcy. The key designs were collaborative efforts with their resources, and that proceeding with your company represents significant risk." The strategy was exactly what Marcus had expected. Howard leveraging his extensive connections to isolate and destroy him professionally. "I understand," he said, maintaining his composure. "And the contract? My board has requested we explore alternative options," Rajiv confirmed apologetically. "I fought for you, Marcus, but with the controversy and the questions being raised about design ownership." "I appreciate your candor, Rajiv," Marcus replied, refusing to display the anger churning beneath his professional veneer. "I hope whoever completes the project maintains the environmental innovations that made the design worthwhile in the first place." After ending the call, Marcus placed his phone face down on the counter and closed his eyes. The Dubai contract had represented not only professional prestige, but also significant financial stability for his firm's expansion. Its loss would inevitably trigger a cascade of consequences. His intercom buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. The doorman announced Samuel Chen's arrival. Minutes later, Samuel entered the apartment, removing his rain-soaked coat. "You look like hell," Samuel observed bluntly, assessing Marcus with the frank concern of a friend who had known him since childhood. "The Dubai contract is gone," Marcus replied, moving to pour them both scotch. Harlow's influence working as expected. Samuel accepted the glass, studying Marcus over the rim. "The Bennett firm? Undoubtedly next in line," Marcus confirmed. "Howard will ensure Jack benefits directly from my loss." Samuel had been Marcus's oldest friend since they were placed in the same foster home at age 10. While Marcus had channeled his intelligence into architecture, Samuel had become a renowned cybersecurity expert, parlaying his natural talent with computers into a successful consulting firm that protected corporate clients from exactly the kind of espionage Marcus had experienced. "I've been analyzing what Diana found," Samuel said, setting his glass down and removing a tablet from his bag. "The pattern goes deeper than you initially realized. He activated the screen, displaying a complex timeline of events dating back to before Marcus's marriage. Howard and Jack didn't just opportunistically steal your designs, Samuel explained. They identified you as a target before Vanessa ever approached you at that charity gala. Marcus stared at the evidence, a cold realization settling in his stomach. The meeting wasn't coincidental. Not even slightly, Samuel confirmed, swiping to display financial transfers between Howard's personal accounts and the charity organization. Howard made a substantial donation specifically to ensure Vanessa would attend and meet you. Your rising reputation in sustainable design had already caught their attention. They orchestrated everything from the beginning. Marcus concluded, the full scope of the deception expanding before him. My entire relationship with Vanessa was manufactured. The initial introduction, certainly, Samuel agreed, hesitating before continuing. Whether her feelings were ever genuine is harder to determine. The communications suggest complexity there, though her complicity in accessing your designs is undeniable. Marcus recalled moments that had seemed authentic. Vanessa's interest in his work, her support during challenging projects, intimate conversations about their hopes for the future. Had every moment been calculated performance? The uncertainty was its own form of torture. There's more, Samuel continued, displaying a series of patent filings. Jack's company has been systematically patenting modified versions of your conceptual designs. They've been careful to change just enough elements to create legal distance, but the core innovations are unmistakably yours. Marcus recognized his work immediately. The vertical garden integration systems, water reclamation processes, passive heating and cooling mechanisms, all subtly altered but fundamentally derived from concepts he had developed and refined over years. How much have they taken? He asked, voice tight with controlled fury. At least 12 major design innovations, Samuel answered, each filed within weeks of you discussing them with Vanessa or leaving materials in your home office. The doorbell interrupted them again. This time, Diana Wells entered, removing her umbrella and raincoat with efficient movements. Her practical attire and direct manner reflected her background as both investigator and advocate. I hope you don't mind my joining, she said to Marcus. Samuel thought it best we coordinate our findings. Of course, Marcus welcomed her. What's the latest? Diana placed her own tablet on the counter, its screen displaying legal documents. Vanessa's legal team is preparing to file for control of your company as part of the divorce. They're claiming her essential intellectual and creative contributions to your most successful designs entitle her to ownership interests. On what possible basis? Marcus demanded, examining the draft filing. They've constructed a narrative where Vanessa was the environmental genius behind your sustainable innovations, Diana explained. They have documentation, emails, notes, conversations, where she suggested elements that later appeared in your designs. Those were our personal discussions, Marcus protested. Vanessa has a background in environmental science. We talked about sustainability concepts constantly, which they're now recasting as her providing essential intellectual property to your work, Diana confirmed grimly. They're also claiming that Howard's business introductions were instrumental to your success, creating another angle for compensation. Samuel leaned against the counter, arms crossed. They're attempting to secure legal rights to your past work while simultaneously destroying your ability to create new work. Classic containment and extraction strategy. The Harlows have also begun approaching your employees, Diana added, displaying evidence of communications between Howard's representatives and several of Marcus's senior designers, offering substantial incentives to join a new sustainability division at Bennett Development. Marcus absorbed the information, the comprehensive nature of the attack becoming clear. Howard wasn't merely seeking to punish him for the public humiliation in the Maldives. He intended to systematically dismantle everything Marcus had built and redistribute its value to Jack's company, with Vanessa as the legal mechanism for extraction. They want everything, Marcus summarized, his voice unnaturally calm. My company, my designs, my team, my reputation. A complete erasure. That appears to be the objective, Diana confirmed. Marcus moved to the windows again, watching raindrops track downward paths across the glass, each following the inevitable pull of gravity, yet finding unique routes in the process. For several minutes, he remained silent, his mind cataloging and analyzing the components of a situation he applied to architectural challenges. When he turned back to his friends, his expression had transformed, not broken by the revelation, but hardened with crystalline clarity. "They've built their success on stolen dreams," he told Diana, his voice steady with newfound purpose. "I'm going to dismantle their empire, one foundation stone at a time." Samuel studied his friend's face, recognizing the emergence of something new and formidable. "What's the plan?" "First, we secure what remains," Marcus decided. "Diana, I need documented proof of everything. The affair, the corporate espionage, Howard's manipulation from the beginning. Every communication, meeting, transfer of information." Diana nodded. "I've already compiled most of it, including evidence that predates your marriage. It's extensive." "Samuel, I need digital fortification," Marcus continued. "My remaining designs, client communications, internal systems, everything locked down against further infiltration." "Already implementing enhanced security protocols," Samuel assured him. "I've also been mapping their network vulnerabilities. If we need access to their systems later, I've identified potential entry points." Marcus moved to his desk, retrieving a small external hard drive. "This contains copies of my original design concepts with creation timestamps. I've kept it in a secure location separate from my main systems since I began suspecting something was wrong." He handed it to Samuel. "We'll need this to establish prior art and ownership." "Smart," Samuel approved, pocketing the device. "What about your team?" "I need to identify who I can still trust," Marcus decided. "We'll arrange confidential meetings with key personnel away from the office, secure locations only." Diana consulted her tablet. "Based on surveillance, I can already identify at least 4 senior designers who have rebuffed Howard's representatives. Angela Chun, Malik Washington, Priya Gupta, and Thomas Okafor have all declined meetings or walked out when approached." "Start with them," Marcus instructed. "Arrange private meetings for tomorrow. We'll establish a core team we can trust while developing containment strategies for those who might be compromised." "What's the endgame?" Samuel asked, studying his friend's face. "Financial settlement? Public vindication? Professional restoration?" Marcus considered the question, his expression hardening further. "Howard and Jack haven't just attacked my business. They've attempted to steal my life's work while using Vanessa to manipulate my personal life for years. They believe their connections and resources make them invulnerable." He paused, his determination crystallizing. "I'm going to show them that architecture has taught me more than just how to build. It's taught me how to identify structural weaknesses and precisely where to apply pressure to bring an entire faulty construction down." "You're talking about systematic dismantling of both companies," Diana observed, her tone neither approving nor disapproving, merely clarifying. "Not just their companies," Marcus corrected. "Their entire carefully constructed reality. The Harlow and Bennett empires rest on public perception of integrity, innovation, and family legacy. I'm going to expose the theft, manipulation, and corruption that actually formed their foundation." Samuel and Diana exchanged glances, recognizing the transformation occurring before them. The architect who had always created was now preparing to strategically destroy. "Whatever you need," Samuel committed. "I'm in." "As am I," Diana affirmed. "They've used privileged positions to take what wasn't theirs. Accountability is long overdue." Marcus moved to a drafting table in the corner of the living room, rolling out a blank sheet of paper. He began sketching, not a building this time, but a structural diagram of interconnected entities representing the Harlow and Bennett interests. He marked points of connection, dependency relationships, and potential vulnerabilities with the same exacting attention he would apply to a complex building foundation. "They believe I'm broken," Marcus said as he worked, his hands steady and precise. "That I'll retreat into bitterness and professional obscurity. that I lack the resources or connections to challenge their combined influence. A significant miscalculation, Samuel noted, watching the diagram take shape. Their fundamental error, Marcus continued, is assuming that my success derived from their approval rather than my own abilities. They've never truly understood that what I built, I can build again, perhaps more effectively with the knowledge experience provides. The diagram expanded, revealing a comprehensive visualization of corporate structures, personal relationships, financial dependencies, and public reputation elements that constituted the Harlow-Bennett alliance. Marcus marked critical nodes with precise annotations, points where strategic pressure would cascade through the system. Where do we begin? Diana asked, studying the emerging blueprint. Marcus indicated a section of the diagram representing public perception. We start by appearing defeated. They need to believe their strategy is working exactly as planned. He marked another node. Meanwhile, we document everything, secure our core assets and personnel, and prepare for strategic intervention when they least expect it. The appearance of surrender as tactical advantage, Samuel observed with approval. Classic misdirection. Precisely, Marcus confirmed. Howard and Jack believe this is a simple demolition. They don't realize it's actually going to be a controlled implosion, with them standing at the center when the supports give way. Outside, the rain continued falling on Manhattan, washing away the day's accumulated grime from streets and buildings alike. Inside the apartment, three figures gathered around a drafting table, illuminated by focused light, as Marcus read. The architect who had created award-winning structures began designing something entirely different, the systematic deconstruction of those who had attempted to destroy him. They've spent years taking what I created, Marcus said, completing the initial diagram with precise, deliberate strokes. Now, they'll learn what happens when an architect applies his skills not to creation, but to carefully calculated destruction. Diana and Samuel watched as Marcus transformed before them, not broken by betrayal, but forged by it, his natural and analytical abilities now directed toward a project of elaborate retribution. The boyish optimism that had somehow survived years in foster care and professional challenges had been replaced by something harder and more formidable, a calculated determination that would not be deterred by sentiment or conventional limitations. They wanted my designs, Marcus said, stepping back to evaluate the completed diagram. Instead, they'll experience my most innovative work firsthand, the systematic dismantling of everything they believed was secure. The blueprint for revenge was drafted. The architect of deception would now become the architect of reckoning, applying the same meticulous attention to detail that had created soaring structures to the precision demolition of the Harlow and Bennett empires. The foundation was laid. Construction would begin immediately. Chapter 4. Laying the groundwork. 6 months after the catastrophic events in the Maldives, Marcus Reed sat in the cramped living room of his Brooklyn apartment, surrounded by rolls of blueprints and half-finished sketches. The space, a stark contrast to his former Manhattan penthouse, served as both living quarters and makeshift office since the dissolution of his firm. January rain tapped against the windows, the sound punctuating the silence as he meticulously reviewed plans for a small restaurant renovation. The doorbell rang. Marcus set aside his sketches and crossed to the door, revealing Samuel Chun holding 2 cups of coffee and a paper bag. "Breakfast," Samuel announced, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "When was the last time you ate something that wasn't takeout?" Marcus accepted the coffee with a nod of thanks. "I had cereal yesterday, possibly the day before." Samuel placed the bag on the cluttered coffee table, surveying the apartment with critical eyes. "You're doing an excellent job looking defeated," he observed. "The question is whether you're actually becoming what you're pretending to be." "I'm fine," Marcus replied, taking a sip from the cup. "The appearance of surrender requires authentic details." "Including not sleeping for days at a time?" Samuel asked, indicating the dark circles under Marcus's eyes. Marcus didn't answer directly, instead gesturing toward his laptop. "Howard made 3 calls to his cardiologist this week. Jack's company is seeking an emergency bridge loan from Eastland Financial. The facade is working, They believe I'm destroyed professionally and financially. Samuel sat on the edge of the desk, his expression serious. And how much of that belief is becoming reality? The Harlows have been systematic in their approach. Your firm is dissolved, your major clients have abandoned you, and your reputation has been damaged by their whisper campaign. All temporary conditions, Marcus replied with quiet confidence. Necessary sacrifices for the endgame. The truth was more complicated than either man acknowledged aloud. The past 6 months had extracted a genuine toll. In the aftermath of the Maldives confrontation, Howard had deployed his resources with ruthless efficiency. Legal challenges to Marcus's patents, rumors about financial improprieties at his firm, suggestions to potential clients that Marcus's designs contained structural flaws. The cumulative effect had made Marcus's professional position untenable, forcing him to dissolve his firm and release most of his employees. Samuel pulled out his own laptop. Speaking of the endgame, I've completed mapping their network vulnerabilities. Howard's personal medical records are heavily protected at his doctor's office, but remarkably accessible through his home network. The man uses his birthday as his password. Marcus's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sharpened with interest. What did you find? Howard has been diagnosed with advanced coronary artery disease, Samuel revealed, turning the laptop to show medical reports. 3 blocked arteries requiring immediate surgical intervention. He's postponed the procedure twice, citing business priorities. Hiding the diagnosis from investors, Marcus surmised. Harlow Enterprises' stock value is intimately linked to Howard's perceived invulnerability. He's been the face and voice of the company for 30 years. Precisely, Samuel confirmed. And that's not the only vulnerability. Jack's company has leveraged itself dangerously on 3 major projects, including your Dubai Tower. They've committed to timelines and cost projections based on your original designs, but their modifications have created significant engineering challenges they didn't anticipate. Marcus absorbed this information that had once made him a formidable architect. Each weakness represented a potential point of structural failure in the empire he intended to dismantle. What about the other element? He asked. Samuel nodded, understanding the reference. I made contact as you suggested. Rachel Kirby is interested in meeting you. She was skeptical of your motives. As she should be, Marcus acknowledged. Arrange a meeting, neutral location, no obvious connections to either of us. Rachel Kirby had been a rising star in architectural circles until her innovative designs for the Chicago Municipal Complex were rejected by the selection committee, a committee that included Howard Harlow and Jack Bennett's father, who had raised concerns about untested approaches from the young female architect. The project had subsequently been awarded to a more established male colleague who implemented a significantly more conservative design. 2 days later, Marcus sat in a quiet corner of an independent bookstore cafe in Greenwich Village, nursing a cup of tea as he waited. He'd purposely arrived early to observe Rachel's approach. When she entered precisely at the scheduled time, her purposeful stride and assessing gaze matched the research he'd conducted on her career. Rachel spotted him immediately, but took her time approaching, stopping to browse architecture books with genuine interest before finally acknowledging his presence. Her handshake was firm, her expression guarded. Mr. Reed, she said, taking the seat across from him. Your assistant was vague about the purpose of this meeting. Samuel isn't my assistant, Marcus corrected gently. He's my oldest friend and currently my only trusted colleague. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Semantics don't answer my question. Direct, Marcus noted with approval. I've studied your work, Ms. Kirby. Your proposal for the Chicago Municipal Complex was revolutionary in its approach to community integration and sustainable materials usage. Ancient history, Rachel replied, though her posture tensed slightly. The selection committee found it too experimental for public funds. The selection committee, including Howard Harlow and Gerald Bennett, found it threatening, Marcus countered, particularly coming from a woman under 40 whose success would challenge their architectural orthodoxy. Rachel studied him silently before responding. You've had your own experiences with the Harlow influence recently. I have, and this meeting is what? Shared commiseration over professional sabotage. Marcus leaned forward slightly. This meeting is an opportunity to create something neither of us could achieve alone. A design approach that would render their conventional thinking obsolete while addressing actual human needs rather than shareholder expectations. He removed a slim portfolio from his messenger bag, sliding it across the table. Rachel opened it cautiously, her professional interest visibly overcoming her skepticism as she examined the preliminary sketches inside. Affordable, sustainable housing modules, she identified, turning pages with increasing interest. Adaptable to various urban environments, modular construction approach, integrated greenhouse components. She looked up sharply. These are preliminary concepts, not developed designs. Intentionally, Marcus confirmed. I have the sustainable integration systems and structural approach. What's missing is the community-centered design philosophy that distinguished your Chicago proposal. The elements that transform buildings from mere structures into functional ecosystems that serve residents' actual needs. Rachel closed the portfolio, her expression thoughtful. Why me? There are other architects with sustainable design experience. Because you understand that architecture isn't about creating monuments to wealth or prestige, Marcus answered. Your designs prioritize human experience within sustainable frameworks. Exactly the counterpoint to the Harlow Bennett approach of glamorous facades concealing conventional, inefficient systems. Rachel tapped her fingers on the closed portfolio. Let's address the elephant in the room. Is this about innovation or revenge? Because I'm interested in the former, but not in becoming collateral damage in the latter. The directness of the question demanded equal honesty. Both, Marcus admitted. I want to create housing that matters, that addresses real needs affordably and sustainably. I also want to demonstrate that true innovation doesn't come from stealing and modifying others' concepts, which has been the Harlow Bennett approach to my work. At least you're honest about your motivations, Rachel acknowledged. What exactly are you proposing? A partnership, Marcus said. Equal input, equal credit, equal ownership of the resulting designs. We create prototype concepts for affordable, sustainable housing that can be deployed in urban environments worldwide. No corporate ownership, no investor-driven compromises. And funding. I've retained enough personal resources to develop initial concepts and prototypes, Marcus answered. After that, we pursue independent investments specifically aligned with our vision. Rachel considered the proposition, her gaze analytical. I'll need to review my contractual obligations with my current firm, and I'll want everything in writing, intellectual property protections specifically. I assumed nothing less. Marcus agreed, sliding a sealed envelope across the table. Draft partnership agreement, including IP protections exceeding industry standards. Take your time reviewing it. As Rachel left with both the portfolio and agreement, Marcus felt the first genuine sense of forward momentum since the collapse of his firm. Rachel's talent complemented his own, her human-centered approach balancing his technical innovation in ways that could create something truly revolutionary. The following week brought another critical element into Marcus's evolving plan. Grace Winters, the environmental journalist who had organized the charity gala where he'd first met Vanessa, contacted him requesting comment on recent professional developments. They arranged to meet at a small park near Columbia University where Grace was teaching a journalism seminar. You look different, Grace observed as they sat on a bench overlooking a chess player's area. More contained, somehow. Professional setbacks will do that, Marcus replied mildly. Grace studied him with the perceptive gaze that had made her environmental reporting so incisive. Your professional setbacks have Howard Harlow's fingerprints all over them. The same Howard Harlow whose daughter you rather spectacularly divorced 6 months ago. You've done your homework. It's my job, Grace confirmed. Just as it's my job to notice when Bennett Development suddenly incorporates design elements remarkably similar to your patented approaches in their Dubai Tower project, the same project originally awarded to your firm. Marcus remained outwardly impassive, though Grace's observations confirmed that at least one influential journalist had recognized the pattern. What exactly are you asking me, Grace? Whether there's a story here beyond the usual corporate poaching, she answered directly. and whether you're willing to comment on the record about design elements that appear suspiciously similar to your patented work. I'm not currently in a position to make accusations against powerful development companies. Marcus responded carefully, following the script he'd prepared for precisely this conversation. Grace's expression reflected both understanding and disappointment. So they've silenced you with legal threats. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Grace closed her notebook. Off the record, then. Marcus hesitated, allowing her to observe his apparent reluctance. I can't comment on specific design similarities. But hypothetically, if someone were investigating construction practices at recent Bennett development projects, they might find interesting discrepancies between materials specified in approved plans and those actually being used on-site. Grace went still, her journalistic instincts visibly engaged. What kind of discrepancies? Hypothetically, Marcus emphasized substitution of lower-grade concrete mixtures, reduction in steel reinforcement specifications, and modification of foundation designs to reduce costs. That would compromise structural integrity, Grace noted, already taking notes despite the supposed off-record nature of the conversation. Hypothetically, Marcus agreed, particularly in regions with seismic activity concerns. Like Dubai, Grace concluded, I couldn't possibly comment on specific projects. Marcus maintained, though his expression conveyed volumes. Grace studied him intently. You understand that if I pursue this, I'll need documentary evidence. Whistleblowers. Something beyond implication. Marcus nodded once, then passed her a small thumb drive. Purely hypothetically, construction site inspection records might reveal interesting patterns if someone knew exactly where to look. Grace pocketed the drive without examining it. Why not go to regulators directly? Regulatory capture is a real phenomenon, Marcus replied. Some investigations require public pressure to overcome institutional resistance, particularly when influential developers maintain close relationships with regulatory bodies. As Grace left with the information that would eventually trigger safety investigations across Bennett development projects, Marcus felt another component of his plan lock into place. The thumb drive contained documented evidence of safety violations that Samuel had extracted from Bennett's internal systems, violations that posed genuine public safety concerns while also serving Marcus's strategic objectives. The final element of groundwork came 2 months later, when the Bennett Development Corporation held a gala event celebrating the groundbreaking of the Dubai Tower, the project that had once been Marcus's crowning achievement. Through careful manipulation of social connections, Marcus secured an invitation despite the obvious awkwardness his presence would create. The event occupied the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, transformed for the evening with architectural models, digital displays, and flowing champagne. Marcus timed his entrance precisely, arriving after most guests were present, but before formal presentations began. His appearance created an immediate ripple effect through the crowd. Conversations pausing, glances exchanged, whispers spreading. Howard Harlow stood with a group of investors, his complexion noticeably grayer than when Marcus had last seen him. Jack Bennett commanded center stage near the architectural model of the Dubai Tower, Vanessa at his side in an emerald gown, her smile fixed with practiced ease. Both men froze momentarily upon noticing Marcus's arrival. Marcus moved through the crowd with deliberate calm, accepting sympathetic murmurs from former colleagues and coolly polite nods from those who had distanced themselves during his downfall. He maintained the demeanor of someone attending out of professional courtesy rather than strategic calculation. When Jack spotted him approaching the Dubai Tower model, wariness visibly overtook his initial shock. Vanessa's composed facade cracked momentarily, uncertainty flickering across her features before being suppressed. Marcus, Jack acknowledged stiffly. This is unexpected. Jack. Vanessa. Marcus nodded to each in turn, his manner pleasant but reserved. Congratulations on the project. The groundbreaking is a significant milestone. Jack's expression betrayed his confusion at this cordial approach. Thank you. It's been a complex process bringing it to this stage. I imagine so. Marcus agreed. The integrated systems require precise calibration to function as designed. The subtle emphasis on as designed caused Jack's expression to tighten slightly. Before he could respond, Marcus continued. I wanted to personally wish you success with the implementation, he said, extending his hand to Jack. Architecture should ultimately serve people, regardless of which firm executes the vision. Jack hesitantly shook the offered hand, visibly thrown by Marcus's apparent graciousness. Nearby guests observed the exchange with undisguised interest, many clearly having anticipated a more dramatic confrontation. Marcus turned to Vanessa, whose composure had recovered though her eyes remained wary. You look well, he offered neutrally. As do you, she replied, her gaze searching his face for hidden meaning. We didn't expect to see you here. Professional courtesy, Marcus explained simply. The industry is too small to maintain petty grievances. Howard Harlow approached before Vanessa could respond, his expression a careful mask of civility overlaying obvious suspicion. Reed, bold of you to attend. Mr. Harlow, Marcus acknowledged. I was just congratulating Jack on reaching this milestone with the Dubai project. A significant achievement. Howard's eyes narrowed slightly. Indeed, though I'm surprised you'd want to witness the success of the project you lost. Architecture is ultimately about creation, not ownership, Marcus replied smoothly. The Dubai Tower will be a landmark regardless of which firm brings it to completion. That deserves recognition. Howard studied him intently, clearly searching for the trap or insult hidden within these magnanimous words. Finding none he could definitively identify, his suspicion only deepened. How professionally mature of you, Howard finally commented, the words clearly costing him effort. And what are you working on these days? Small residential renovations, I understand. The veiled insult hung in the air. Marcus allowed a brief flicker of apparent discomfort to cross his features, just enough to suggest Howard's barb had found its mark. Smaller projects, yes, he confirmed. A chance to reconnect with fundamental design principles. He gestured toward the Dubai model. Sometimes a step back provides necessary perspective. Before Howard could respond, Marcus nodded politely to the group. I should circulate. Again, congratulations on the groundbreaking. I look forward to seeing how the project develops. As he moved away, Marcus felt Howard's suspicious gaze following him. The interaction had achieved precisely what he intended, creating confusion about his motives while planting the first seeds of paranoia about what his apparent acceptance might conceal. Later that evening, as Howard and Jack delivered remarks about the Dubai project, Marcus observed from the periphery, noting how Jack stumbled slightly when describing the tower's innovative sustainability features that had originated in Marcus's designs. More tellingly, he noticed Howard repeatedly touching his left arm during moments of stress, a subtle indication of the cardiac symptoms he was attempting to conceal from investors. When Marcus departed the event, he left behind a room filled with speculation about his motives and mental state. Some guests interpreted his presence as a desperate attempt to remain relevant in architectural circles. Others saw it as admirable professional resilience. Only Howard seemed to suspect the truth, that Marcus's apparent acceptance of defeat might conceal something more strategic. As his car pulled away from the plaza, Marcus checked his phone to find a message from Rachel Kirby. Reviewed agreement. Ready to discuss modifications. Your concepts have merit. Meeting tomorrow. The foundations were being laid, one element at a time. Howard and Jack believed they were witnessing the completed demolition of Marcus Reed's career. They failed to recognize that they were actually observing the careful groundwork for something much more significant. The systematic deconstruction of their own empire, beginning with the exploitation of structural weaknesses they didn't even realize had been exposed. Chapter 5. Rising Structure. The offices of Blackwell, Singh, and Foster occupied the 27th floor of a Midtown Manhattan building, their understated elegance projecting exactly the image Marcus needed for the next phase of his plan. He adjusted his tie as the elevator ascended, mentally reviewing key details of the meeting ahead. Just to confirm, Mr. Reed, the young associate walking beside him said, You're establishing Phoenix Designs as a privately held LLC with yourself as sole beneficial owner, correct? Not exactly. Marcus corrected. The ownership structure will be more complex. Phoenix Designs will be owned by 3 separate holding companies, each registered in different jurisdictions. Those companies will be owned by a trust with anonymous beneficiaries. The associate nodded, making notes. Similar to structures used by high-net-worth individuals concerned with privacy. May I ask why such complexity is necessary for a new design firm? Privacy, as you mentioned, Marcus replied, and flexibility for future growth opportunities. What he didn't explain was that the intricate ownership structure would make it virtually impossible for the Harlows or Bennetts to identify him as the controlling entity behind Phoenix Designs, a critical element for the acquisition strategy he intended to implement. In the conference room, Natalie Foster, a corporate attorney with a reputation for creative but legally sound business structures, waited with a stack of documents. "Mr. Reed," she greeted him. "I've prepared the formation documents as requested. Once executed, Phoenix Designs can begin operations immediately with the ownership structure disguised through the layers we discussed." "Perfect," Marcus approved, taking a seat at the table. "And the discretionary trust for acquisition purposes?" "Established with the parameters you specified," Natalie confirmed. "Initial funding of $5 million transferred from your personal accounts. The trust can begin property acquisitions through various proxies as directed." Marcus signed the documents, each signature bringing his plan closer to implementation. The financial resources he'd secured before Howard's campaign against him, liquidated investments, overseas accounts, and personal savings, would now be deployed through a structure designed to conceal his involvement until the moment of maximum impact. "There's one additional matter," Marcus said as he signed the final document. "I need information about property adjoining the Harlow Wharf development in Brooklyn, specifically parcels that control access points or affect future expansion potential." Natalie looked up sharply. "Targeting Harlow properties specifically could raise questions about your motivations, Mr. Reed, given your history with the family." "I'm not targeting anything," Marcus replied calmly. "I'm exploring investment opportunities in developing neighborhoods. If some happen to adjoin Harlow projects, that's merely coincidence." "Coincidence?" Natalie repeated skeptically. "Mr. Reed, as your attorney, I should advise that actions that could be construed as deliberate interference with Harlow business interests might expose you to litigation." "Your concern is noted," Marcus acknowledged. "But Phoenix Designs will be making legitimate property investments based on sound business principles. The fact that Howard Harlow won't appreciate those investments is incidental." Over the following weeks, Phoenix Designs, through various proxy buyers, began systematic acquisition of small but strategically valuable properties surrounding the Harlow Wharf development, Howard's most ambitious current project. Each purchase appeared random and unconnected. A small warehouse here, a vacant lot there, a parking facility, a narrow access road, all acquired by different corporate entities that gave no indication of common ownership. Meanwhile, in a converted industrial space in Brooklyn, Marcus and Rachel Kirby had established their design studio, focusing on the affordable housing concept that would serve both humanitarian goals and strategic purposes. "The modular approach allows for cultural adaptation," Rachel explained, indicating elements on the digital model displayed on her tablet. "The basic structure remains consistent for manufacturing efficiency, but the configuration, materials, and aesthetic elements can be modified to reflect local needs and preferences." Marcus studied the rendering with genuine appreciation. "The integration with the vertical garden systems is seamless. You've solved the water distribution challenge I was struggling with by inverting the collection system," Rachel confirmed, "capturing and filtering at multiple levels rather than a centralized repository. It's more efficient and creates redundancy if any single component fails." Their collaboration had progressed rapidly, mutual respect overcoming initial wariness. Rachel brought human-centered design principles that complemented Marcus's technical innovations, creating a housing concept that could genuinely transform urban environments while remaining economically viable for lower-income communities. Marcus's phone chimed with an incoming message. He checked it briefly, then set it aside. Problem? Rachel asked, noting his momentary distraction. Update from Samuel, Marcus explained. He's monitoring communications of interest. Rachel studied him for a moment. The revenge aspect of this project. How extensively are you pursuing that parallel track? As necessary, Marcus replied, returning his attention to their design. Does it concern you? Only if it compromises what we're building here, Rachel answered honestly. This housing concept deserves to exist independent of whatever personal vendetta you're pursuing against the Harlows. It will, Marcus assured her. The design stands on its own merits regardless of surrounding circumstances. What Marcus didn't share was the content of Samuel's message. Confirmation that anonymous text messages had been successfully delivered to Vanessa Bennett's personal phone, containing evidence of Jack's ongoing affairs, including photographs of him with Howard's young assistant entering a hotel near Bennett Development's offices. The strategy was calculated. While Marcus had no interest in reconciliation with Vanessa, her disillusionment with Jack would create tension within the alliance arrayed against him. Samuel's surveillance had already confirmed that Vanessa and Jack's relationship was showing strain under the pressures of the Dubai project's complications and Howard's demanding oversight. That evening, in the penthouse apartment Jack and Vanessa now shared, the first cracks appeared in their facade of perfect partnership. Vanessa stood by the window, phone clutched in her hand, her face pale with controlled anger. "Who sent these?" Jack demanded, scrolling through the images on Vanessa's phone. "There's no identification, no number, just anonymous photos meant to cause trouble." "The sender is irrelevant," Vanessa replied coldly. "The content, however, seems quite relevant." "That's Megan, isn't it? Dad's assistant? The one you insisted was just being friendly at the Christmas party?" Jack's expression cycled rapidly through shock, denial, and calculation. "These could be manipulated. Photography can be edited." "Stop," Vanessa interrupted. "Don't insult my intelligence with denials." "The Carlisle Hotel, Jack? Really? Couldn't you at least have chosen somewhere less obvious?" Jack set the phone down, shifting to damage control. It was a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment during a stressful period with the Dubai project. "Interesting defense," Vanessa noted with brutal calm, particularly since the date stamp shows this momentary lapse, occurring weekly for the past 2 months. The confrontation continued, voices rising and falling as Jack alternated between defensive anger and strategic contrition. Neither noticed the subtle digital intrusion as Samuel remotely accessed their home network, documenting the argument through the apartment's smart home system. The destabilization of the Bennett-Harlow alliance continued the following week during a crucial investor meeting at Harlow Enterprises headquarters. Howard Harlow stood before a group of the company's most significant backers, presenting projections for the wharf development with characteristic confidence. The Brooklyn waterfront transformation represents not just a real estate opportunity, but a legacy project for our company, Howard proclaimed, indicating architectural renderings displayed on the screen behind him. A mixed-use development that will redefine. He paused suddenly, his left hand rising to his chest. The momentary falter might have been dismissed as a cough or brief loss of train of thought, but those watching closely, including specific investors Marcus had ensured would attend this particular presentation, noticed the flash of pain that crossed Howard's features. "Mr. Harlow," prompted Anton Kimura, head of a Japanese investment consortium and specifically invited to this meeting through indirect channels Marcus had arranged. "Are you all right?" "Perfectly fine," Howard insisted, though his complexion had visibly grayed. "As I was saying, the wharf development represents a cornerstone investment with projected returns of..." The second cardiac episode was more pronounced. Howard gripped the podium, breathing becoming visibly labored. Jack Bennett quickly moved forward from the side of the room. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess," Jack suggested, a hand on Howard's shoulder. "I don't need a recess," Howard snapped, though the strain in his voice betrayed him. He turned back to the investors, determination overriding physical distress. "The development timeline ensures that initial occupancy will..." The collapse when it came was not dramatic, but unmistakable. Howard simply stopped speaking mid-sentence, his knees buckling as Jack managed to catch him before he hit the floor. The room erupted in concerned voices and movement as Howard's assistant called for medical assistance. Among the investors witnessing this alarming display of vulnerability was Sophia Reyes, whose hedge fund controlled significant Harlow Enterprises stock and who had received an anonymous but well-documented analysis of succession planning weaknesses within the company just days earlier. Her concerned gaze followed Howard as he was assisted from the room, but her mind was already reassessing investment positions based on this new evidence of leadership instability. Marcus received confirmation of these events while meeting with Veronica Nash, a former client whose women's shelter he had designed and who now served on the New York City Council. They sat in her modest office at City Hall, reviewing zoning regulations affecting urban housing development. The committee is considering modifications to the affordable housing requirements in mixed-use developments, Veronica explained, indicating sections of the draft legislation. Currently, developers can satisfy the requirement with units dispersed throughout the city. The proposed change would require affordable units within the actual development footprint. That would significantly impact luxury waterfront projects, Marcus observed, particularly those already in planning stages. It would, Veronica confirmed with a knowing smile, especially developments that haven't yet secured final approvals, like the Harlow Wharf project. Interesting timing, Marcus noted, maintaining a neutral expression. Isn't it? Veronica agreed, particularly since the zoning modification would require substantial redesign of their current plans. The committee votes next month. Their conversation continued, focusing on the potential for Marcus and Rachel's housing concept to address municipal needs within the evolving regulatory framework. Veronica had genuine interest in their innovative approach, independent of any impact it might have on Harlow projects. We're preparing to enter the International Urban Housing Competition, Marcus mentioned as their meeting concluded. The exposure would help attract appropriate investors aligned with our vision. Wonderful, Veronica responded. The timing couldn't be better with these regulatory changes on the horizon. The city will need viable alternatives to conventional development approaches. 3 weeks later, Rachel and Marcus stood beside their physical model at the International Urban Housing Exhibition in Berlin, explaining their concept to judges and attendees. Their design, branded as adaptive community housing rather than Bearing Phoenix Design's identification, attracted significant attention from both humanitarian organizations and forward-thinking investors. The integration of agricultural components with residential spaces creates true sustainability, Rachel explained to the judging panel. Residents produce a portion of their own food, creating both nutritional security and potential microenterprise opportunities. And construction costs? Questioned a judge with experience in developing nation housing challenges. 40% below conventional construction through modular manufacturing and simplified assembly systems, Marcus answered. The materials are locally adaptable, but the structural system remains consistent for safety and efficiency. Their presentation concluded to appreciative nods from the judges. As they moved away from the display, Rachel squeezed Marcus's arm in subdued excitement. They were impressed, she observed quietly. The questions focused on implementation rather than concept viability. A good sign, Marcus agreed. Though winning isn't the only objective here. Indeed, Marcus had ensured that several architecture and design publications had representatives present specifically to document their presentation. Publications that would inevitably compare their innovative approach to the derivative sustainability elements being implemented in Bennett Development's Dubai Tower. When the announcement came the following evening that their design had won the competition's gold medal, the moment carried multiple layers of significance. Beyond professional validation, it represented a critical public counterpoint to the designs Jack Bennett had appropriated from Marcus, demonstrating that genuine innovation continued to evolve while stolen concepts remained static. Marcus carefully managed his public response to the award, emphasizing Rachel's contributions and the humanitarian potential of their design rather than any personal vindication. He avoided direct comparisons to Bennett development projects while ensuring media coverage naturally made those connections. This recognition belongs primarily to Rachel, he told reporters at the award ceremony. Her human-centered approach transformed technical sustainability systems into actual community infrastructure. It's a perfect example of how collaboration produces results no individual could achieve alone. The pointed contrast to Jack's appropriation of his work remained unspoken but unmistakable to industry insiders. As anticipated, architectural publications noted the stark difference between Bennett Development's derivative implementation of sustainability features and the revolutionary integration demonstrated by Kirby and Reed's award-winning design. The following morning, as Marcus and Rachel celebrated their success over breakfast at their Berlin hotel, Samuel's message arrived confirming another strategic objective achieved. Howard Harlow had been discharged from the hospital following what was publicly described as exhaustion, but privately diagnosed as a minor cardiac event requiring immediate lifestyle modifications and medication. More significantly, Samuel reported that Howard had discovered the first indications that someone was systematically acquiring properties surrounding his wharf development. Though he had not yet identified Phoenix Designs as the controlling entity behind these seemingly unrelated purchases. Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he processed this information. The structure was rising precisely as designed, each element supporting the others, creating a framework that would soon be impossible for the Harlows and Bennetts to escape. "You seem pleased about something beyond our award," Rachel observed, studying his expression. "Just contemplating next steps," Marcus replied. "The recognition creates opportunities we should leverage quickly." Rachel nodded, though her perceptive gaze suggested she recognized there was more to his satisfaction than professional advancement. She had accepted the duality of their partnership, authentic collaboration toward meaningful architectural innovation alongside Marcus's parallel agenda of strategic retribution. As they prepared to return to New York, Marcus made one final call to Samuel. "Implement the next phase," he instructed without preamble. "It's time to apply pressure to the foundation." Chapter 6. Pressure Points. Howard Harlow's spacious office on the 40th floor of Harlow Tower offered panoramic views of Manhattan. Though he wasn't admiring the scenery as he paced before his desk, phone pressed to his ear. "What do you mean you can't identify the buyer?" he demanded, voice tight with barely controlled anger. "These are random properties surrounding a billion-dollar development. Someone coordinating these purchases must have left a paper trail." On the other end of the call, Howard's head of acquisitions attempted to explain the complex web of holding companies and trusts that had systematically acquired control of virtually all access points to the wharf development. "They're using sophisticated anonymization structures," Mr. Harlow, the executive explained. "Different attorneys for each transaction, diverse corporate entities registered in multiple jurisdictions, no common signatures or representatives. Whoever orchestrated this clearly didn't want to be identified, and they all trace back to Phoenix Designs." Howard pressed. "Eventually, yes, but Phoenix itself is owned through layered entities that obscure the beneficial owner. We've hired specialized forensic accountants, but unraveling the structure could take months." Howard ended the call with a curt instruction to spare no expense in identifying the controlling interests behind Phoenix Designs. As he set the phone down, his hand moved unconsciously to his chest, massaging the spot where persistent discomfort had become his constant companion since the collapse at the investor meeting. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Harlow, the construction supervisor from Wharf Development, is on line 2. He says it's urgent regarding the Eastern Access Road." Howard pressed the button. "Harlow, sir, we've been served with a cease and desist order," the supervisor reported, anxiety evident in his voice. "The Eastern Access Road we've been using for equipment and materials. Apparently the new owner is asserting property rights and demanding we find alternative access immediately." "That's impossible," Howard snapped. "That access point is essential to the construction timeline. What are our alternatives?" "That's the problem, sir. With the recent acquisitions of surrounding properties, We don't have alternatives without significant detours that would add substantial costs and delays. The implications crystallized in Howard's mind. Someone had identified and acquired the precise properties needed to strangle his development, creating bottlenecks that could render the entire project financially unviable if construction timelines extended. Contact Phoenix Designs directly, Howard instructed. Make an offer for the Eastern Access Road, 10% above market value. We've tried, sir. Their representative said the property isn't for sale at any price. They suggested we should have secured proper access rights before committing to the development timeline. Howard's jaw tightened at the implied criticism. Double the offer. Everyone has a price. 3 days and multiple increasingly generous offers later, Howard stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, staring at the skyline as his son-in-law entered the room. Jack Bennett's normally confident demeanor had given way to visible tension in recent weeks, his designer's suit failing to conceal the strain evident in his posture. "You wanted to see me?" Jack asked, remaining standing rather than taking a seat. Howard turned, studying the younger man with calculating eyes. Phoenix Designs has rejected every offer for the access properties. No counter-proposals, no negotiations, simply flat refusals to engage. "That's unusual," Jack acknowledged. "Have you identified who's behind the company?" "Not yet," Howard replied, "though I have theories." He moved to his desk, activating a display screen that showed a map of the wharf development with surrounding properties highlighted in red. "Look at the pattern. These acquisitions weren't opportunistic, they're strategic. Someone identified precisely which parcels could cripple our development if controlled by outside interests." Jack studied the display, recognition dawning. Someone with architectural and development expertise. Someone who understands how large projects are executed. Someone with motivation to target you specifically. "Reed," Howard stated flatly. "It seems probable," Jack agreed. "Though why emerge now, after months of apparent defeat?" Because he wasn't defeated, Howard realized the pieces assembling in his mind. He was planning. That appearance at your Dubai groundbreaking wasn't graciousness. It was reconnaissance. He was assessing our vulnerabilities while appearing to accept his situation. Jack shifted uncomfortably. "Speaking of vulnerabilities, there's something we need to discuss about the Dubai project." Howard's attention sharpened. "What problem?" "The modifications we made to Reed's original designs. They're creating unexpected complications," Jack admitted reluctantly. "The sustainability systems aren't functioning as projected. We're seeing integration failures between the components." "Fix it," Howard demanded bluntly. "It's not that simple," Jack countered, frustration evident. "Reed's original designs had interdependencies we didn't fully understand when adapting them. The systems were integrated at a fundamental level. Changing elements creates cascade effects through related systems. You're telling me your engineers can't solve problems created by a single architect?" Howard's voice carried dangerous disappointment. "I'm telling you Reed's approach was more sophisticated than we recognized," Jack clarified, defensive tension rising. "These aren't isolated systems. They're ecosystems with complex relationships. Solving one issue creates 3 more elsewhere." Howard's expression hardened. The Dubai client is expecting operational excellence, not excuses. If those systems fail to perform as promised, the financial penalties will be substantial. Jack hesitated before continuing. "That's actually why I needed to speak with you. The project delays and modification costs are creating cash flow issues for Bennett Development. We need a capital infusion to bridge until completion." "How much?" "20 million, Jack admitted. "The banks are restricting additional lending until we demonstrate resolution of the technical issues." Howard's laugh held no humor. "20 million. While my own company faces construction delays that will cost millions due to this Phoenix Design situation." He moved closer to Jack, voice lowering. "Did it occur to you that these situations might be connected? That Reed is coordinating attacks on both our companies simultaneously?" Jack paled slightly. "You think he's behind our technical issues too?" "I think he's exploiting vulnerability wherever he finds it," Howard replied. "The question is how he's obtaining current information about our operations." The Phoenix acquisitions demonstrate sophisticated intelligence about our development plans. The timing of your technical issues emerging immediately after his reappearance can't be coincidence. The implication hung in the air between them. Jack straightened defensively. If you're suggesting Vanessa is involved, I'm suggesting we have information security problems, Howard interrupted, and that all possibilities should be investigated. Before Jack could respond, Howard's phone rang with a call he'd been awaiting. He answered immediately, listening intently before responding. Make the offer directly to their attorney then. $50 million for all Phoenix properties adjoining the wharf development. Final offer, non-negotiable. He ended the call, turning back to find Jack watching him with concerned calculation. $50 million for access properties? Jack questioned. That's necessary, Howard completed firmly, and still cheaper than the alternative. He returned to the window, gazing at the city that had bent to his will for decades. As for your Dubai problem, I'll arrange the capital infusion through Harlow Enterprises as a short-term loan. In exchange, Bennett Development will transfer 30% ownership of the Dubai project to my company. Jack's expression revealed momentary shock before corporate pragmatism reasserted control. That's a substantial equity position for a bridge loan. It's the cost of survival, Howard countered without sympathy. Take it or find your $20 million elsewhere. As Jack departed with reluctant agreement, Howard remained at the window, mind working through implications and contingencies. For decades, he had maintained control through superior resources and ruthless decisiveness. The current challenges were unprecedented but ultimately manageable, or so he believed. What Howard couldn't see was Marcus Reed in his Brooklyn apartment, reviewing Samuel's latest intelligence report detailing the exact conversation that had just transpired. The extensive access Samuel had established to Harlow and Bennett systems provided real-time insights into their deteriorating circumstances and desperate countermeasures. Howard offered $50 million for the Phoenix properties, Marcus noted to Diana Wells, who sat across from him reviewing legal documents. Exactly as you predicted. His only logical move, given the construction schedule commitments, Diana confirmed. Did Samuel capture the response? Not yet transmitted, Marcus replied, but it will be consistent with our strategy. No response to any offer, regardless of amount. The properties aren't for sale at any price. Diana nodded approvingly. Financial pressure intensifies when uncertainty prevents accurate risk assessment. Howard can manage known costs, even exorbitant ones. What he can't manage is the inability to determine whether any solution exists. Marcus set aside the report, turning to another matter. What about the Vanessa situation? The anonymous information was delivered yesterday, Diana confirmed. Documentation of the original plan between Howard and Jack to use her as conduit for your designs, including Howard's assessment that she would be discarded once her usefulness ended. I included the recording where Jack agreed that keeping her was a small price for accessing Reed's innovation pipeline. Marcus's expression remained neutral despite the personal nature of this intelligence. The recordings, captured during the early days of his marriage through surveillance Howard had never suspected, confirmed that Vanessa had been positioned as an unwitting participant in the initial stages of the plan, though she had eventually become a willing collaborator. How do you think she'll respond? Diana asked, studying Marcus with professional detachment. She'll confront Howard directly, Marcus predicted. Despite everything, she still believes her father values her beyond her utility. Learning otherwise will fracture that relationship irreparably. This assessment proved accurate. That evening, Vanessa Bennett entered her father's home office at his Connecticut estate without announcing herself, tablet in hand, displaying damning documentation. Is this true? She demanded without preamble, voice tight with controlled emotion. Was I just a tool to acquire Marcus's designs from the beginning? To be discarded once you had what you needed? Howard looked up from his desk, momentary surprise giving way to calculated assessment. He recognized immediately the source material she referenced, private conversations with Jack from years earlier, somehow extracted from secure communications. Where did you get this? He countered, neither confirming nor denying. Does it matter? Vanessa challenged. Is it accurate? Was I just collateral damage in your corporate espionage project? Howard sighed, setting aside the document he'd been reviewing. You're being dramatic, Vanessa. Business strategy often requires complex approaches. Complex approaches, she repeated incredulously. Is that what you call using your daughter as corporate spy? Arranging her marriage as a means of intellectual property theft? I arranged an introduction to an architect whose innovations could benefit our family's companies, Howard corrected coldly. What developed afterward was your choice. No one forced you to marry him. No one forced you to maintain a relationship with Jack throughout that marriage. You encouraged it, Vanessa accused. You facilitated meetings, created alibis, pressured me to extract information. And you complied? Howard interrupted sharply. Fully aware of what you were doing. Don't suddenly claim victimhood in a scenario where you were an active participant. The truth of this assessment landed visibly. Vanessa's righteous anger faltered momentarily before recalibrating. So, it's true then, she concluded quietly. I was always just a means to an end for you. A corporate asset to be deployed against Marcus. Howard's expression softened slightly, though calculation remained evident beneath the paternal concern. Vanessa, you're my daughter. That relationship exists independent of business considerations. But we're Harlows. Our personal and professional lives have always been intertwined. And the plan to discard me once you had what you needed, she pressed. Was that also part of being a Harlow? Howard studied her for a moment before responding with brutal pragmatism. That contingency was discussed, but never implemented. Your continued relationship with Jack created unexpected strategic advantages. Why disrupt an arrangement that was working effectively for all parties? Vanessa absorbed this with visible dismay. All parties except Marcus. Reed was never family, Howard dismissed. He was an outsider with valuable intellectual property who could have been appropriately compensated had he been willing to work within our established systems. Instead, he insisted on independent recognition and control. His current circumstances are the natural consequence of that choice. The conversation continued, emotional intensity gradually giving way to cold reality as Vanessa confronted her father's transactional view of relationships and her own complicity in the manipulation of Marcus. By its conclusion, Howard had neither apologized nor fully justified his actions, instead suggesting pragmatically that Vanessa make herself useful by focusing Jack on resolving the Dubai project's technical challenges. The past is immaterial at this point, Howard told her as she prepared to leave. What matters is preserving what we've built. Jack needs your support to navigate the current difficulties. Your environmental expertise might help address the sustainability system integration problems. Vanessa paused at the door, studying her father with new understanding. Did it ever occur to you that Marcus might have anticipated this? That he might have designed those systems specifically to fail if modified without his input? Howard's expression sharpened with interest. Is that possible? It's exactly what I would have done, Vanessa replied before departing, leaving Howard with yet another uncomfortable possibility to consider. The following week brought the architectural industry's annual conference, a gathering where Marcus and Rachel's award-winning housing concept would be presented alongside other significant innovations. The timing proved perfect for the next pressure point in Marcus's strategy. Rather than simply displaying their Berlin competition model, Marcus had expanded the presentation to reveal a comprehensive, sustainable city concept, an integrated urban design approach that demonstrated how their housing modules formed just one component of a revolutionary framework for community development. Their presentation attracted substantial attention, with industry leaders and media crowding the exhibition space to witness what architectural journals were already describing as potentially the most significant urban design evolution of the decade. Jack Bennett attended the conference as required by his position, though his attention was clearly divided between professional obligations and the mounting pressures facing his company. He arrived at Marcus and Rachel's presentation midway through, positioning himself at the back of the crowd where he believed he wouldn't be noticed. Marcus, however, had anticipated his presence. Without directly acknowledging Jack, He guided the presentation toward technical elements that would have particular relevance to the Dubai project's current difficulties. The integration of water management, energy generation, and climate control creates dependencies that cannot be separated without compromising system integrity, Marcus explained to the assembled audience. Attempting to modify individual components without understanding these relationships inevitably leads to cascade failures throughout the system. The pointed relevance to Jack's current technical challenges was unmistakable to those familiar with the Dubai project's reported difficulties. Several attendees glanced between Marcus and Jack, recognizing the implied criticism of Bennett Development's approach. Marcus continued, highlighting specific innovations that directly contrasted with the modified versions of his designs that Jack had implemented in Dubai. Without ever mentioning Bennett Development by name, he systematically demonstrated the superiority of his original approach compared to the derivative adaptations currently being attempted in certain international projects. By the presentation's conclusion, the professional audience clearly recognized that Marcus was showcasing not just innovation, but the distinction between original design excellence and inferior imitation. Jack departed before the final questions, his expression revealing the impact of this public, if indirect, humiliation. That evening, as industry leaders gathered for the conference gala dinner, Marcus received an urgent message from Diana. Financial regulator investigation initiated into Harlow Enterprises' shell company structure. Stock trading suspended pending inquiry. The timing wasn't coincidental. Diana had compiled extensive documentation of Howard's complex shell company structure used to conceal corporate debt and liabilities, carefully packaging the evidence for financial regulators with anonymous delivery timed to coincide with the conference when industry attention would amplify its impact. Marcus observed the ripple effect moving through the gala as executives received alerts about the Harlow investigation. Conversations shifted, glances directed toward Howard's associates present at the event, speculation spreading like contagion through the room. Rachel joined Marcus at their table, having completed a circuit of networking conversations. "Something's happening," she observed. The Bennett Development representatives just left abruptly after receiving messages. "Market corrections," Marcus replied simply. Sometimes overlooked weaknesses suddenly become apparent to regulators. Rachel studied him with knowing assessment. "You're doing truth finding its moment," Marcus countered. "The regulators are simply receiving information they should have had access to earlier." As the evening progressed, additional news arrived. Bennett Development stock had dropped 17% on rumors that the Dubai project faced significant technical challenges and potential contract penalties. The cumulative effect, Harlow under regulatory investigation and Bennett facing project failures, created a perfect storm that threatened both companies simultaneously. Marcus received the updates with outward composure that belied his internal satisfaction. The pressure points had been precisely identified and systematically exploited. Howard's hidden health issues and concealed financial structures, Jack's technical inadequacies and over-leveraged projects, Vanessa's belated recognition of her disposable status in her father's strategic calculations. The structure of vengeance was rising according to his carefully crafted blueprint, each element supporting the others, creating a framework from which the Harlow and Bennett empires could not extract themselves without fundamental damage to their foundations. As Marcus and Rachel departed the gala, a message arrived from Samuel. Howard attempting emergency board meeting to address regulatory investigation. Jack seeking alternative financing after Harlow loan terms rejected. Vanessa confronted Jack about additional affairs discovered in anonymous message. Structure showing stress fractures at all identified pressure points. Marcus allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he read the update. The architectural precision he had applied to designing buildings had proved equally effective when applied to systematically dismantling the empire that had attempted to destroy him. The pressure points were performing exactly as intended, creating compounding stresses that would soon render the entire structure unsustainable. Next phase. Samuel's message asked. "Proceed as planned," Marcus confirmed. "Maintain pressure on all fronts." The demolition was proceeding exactly on schedule, each strategic element performing its function in the carefully orchestrated deconstruction of the Harlow-Bennett alliance. The empire that had believed itself invulnerable was discovering that its greatest weakness had been underestimating the architect whose life they had attempted to dismantle. Chapter 7. Structural Failure. The Dubai skyline glittered in the afternoon sun as Jack Bennett stood at the window of his hotel suite, phone pressed to his ear. The conversation was not going well. "What do you mean they already hold the patents?" he demanded, his carefully maintained composure fracturing. "These are our designs. We filed all the necessary paperwork." On the other end of the line, the legal representative of Emirates Global Development attempted to explain the situation once more. "Mr. Bennett, I'm afraid the situation is clear. The core sustainable design elements you're offering were patented 6 months ago in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Bahrain by various shell companies that ultimately trace back to Phoenix Designs." Jack's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. We've been developing these systems for years." "The patent office documentation suggests otherwise," the lawyer replied calmly. "The timestamps on the original filings predate your company's submissions by significant margins. Unless you can prove prior art that precedes their claims, any implementation of these systems in our region would constitute patent infringement." The call ended with formal pleasantries that did nothing to mask the reality. The deal Jack had been counting on to save Bennett Development from financial collapse had just evaporated. He placed the phone down with unnatural care, then in a sudden burst of fury, swept a vase from the nearby table, sending it crashing against the wall. How had Reed anticipated this move? The Middle Eastern expansion had been Bennett Development's contingency plan, a strategy known only to Jack, his father, and Howard. Yet somehow, Marcus had not only predicted it, but systematically blocked it months in advance. Jack's phone chimed with a message from his father. "Banks calling in loans. Board meeting emergency session. Return immediately." The implosion was accelerating. Jack booked the next flight to New York, his mind racing through increasingly desperate options. Without the Emirates contracts, Bennett Development faced imminent bankruptcy. Their over-leveraged positions on multiple projects, combined with the technical failures in the Dubai Tower, had created a perfect storm that no amount of Howard Harlow's influence could forestall. Meanwhile, in New York, Howard Harlow sat in his wood-paneled office reviewing the latest financial reports with growing alarm. The regulatory investigation into his shell company structure had expanded, freezing critical lines of credit. The wharf development remained stalled due to access issues controlled by Phoenix Designs, bleeding millions in carrying costs and penalty clauses for missed construction deadlines. His assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Harlow, the representatives from Eastland Financial are here for your meeting." Howard straightened his tie, composing his features into the mask of confidence that had served him for decades. "Send them in." 3 bankers entered, led by Victoria Chong, Eastland's head of real estate finance. Her expression gave nothing away as she took the seat opposite Howard. "Thank you for making time on short notice, Mr. Harlow," she began, opening a leather portfolio. "Given recent developments, Eastland Financial needs to reassess our exposure to Harlow Enterprises." "A routine review, I assume," Howard responded smoothly. "Our relationship with Eastland spans 3 decades. Victoria's expression remained neutral. "Unfortunately, this isn't routine. The regulatory investigations, construction delays at the wharf project, and your company's concerning debt-to-asset ratio have triggered covenant violations on your primary credit facilities." Howard maintained his composure through decades of practiced corporate warfare. "Temporary challenges, Ms. Chong. The regulatory matter is a misunderstanding that will be resolved shortly. The wharf development access issues are being negotiated. Our fundamentals remain strong." "That brings me to the primary purpose of our meeting," Victoria continued, sliding a document across the desk. "Eastland has received an offer to purchase all outstanding debt instruments related to Harlow Enterprises. We're required by our agreement to give you notice and right of first refusal." Howard glanced at the document, then froze. "Phoenix Designs? They're attempting to purchase our debt." "They've made an offer at par value," Victoria confirmed. "Given the risk profile increase, Eastland's credit committee considers this a favorable exit. Unless Harlow Enterprises can retire these obligations within 72 hours, we intend to accept their offer. The implications were immediately clear to Howard. Phoenix Designs was executing a debt acquisition strategy, purchasing Harlow Enterprises' financial obligations to position themselves as the primary creditor. Once completed, they could effectively control the company's fate through debt covenants. The amount is substantial, Howard noted, maintaining outward calm while his mind calculated frantically. Assembling these resources on such short notice would be challenging under normal circumstances. We understand, Victoria replied. However, given market conditions and the regulatory uncertainty, Eastland has a fiduciary duty to minimize exposure. After the bankers departed, Howard sat motionless behind his desk. For the first time in his business career, he confronted the real possibility of losing control of his empire. The chess pieces had moved in ways he hadn't anticipated, revealing a game far more sophisticated than he'd believed Marcus Reed capable of playing. He pressed the intercom. "Get Jack Bennett on the phone." Immediately, 20 minutes later, having failed to reach Jack, Howard tried calling Vanessa instead. Her clipped tone revealed the strain in their relationship that had developed since their confrontation over her role in Howard's plans. "What is it, Father? I'm rather busy." Phoenix Designs is making a move to acquire Harlow Enterprises' debt, Howard explained without preamble. "I need to speak with Jack." "He's in Dubai," Vanessa replied. "Or was. I believe he's flying back for some emergency at his family's company. When he lands, tell him to call me immediately," Howard instructed. "This is coordinated. Reed is targeting both our companies simultaneously." Vanessa's bitter laugh carried through the connection. "How unexpected that someone might use coordinated strategies against us. Isn't that precisely what you did to Marcus for years?" "This isn't the time for moral equivalence, Vanessa," Howard snapped. "Everything we've built is at risk." "Everything you've built," she corrected, "on stolen ideas and manipulation. Perhaps you're simply experiencing what they call karma." Before Howard could respond, a sharp pain radiated through his chest, stealing his breath. The sensation intensified, a crushing pressure that sent him slumping forward in his chair. His vision blurred as he fumbled for the emergency button beneath his desk. By the time paramedics arrived, Howard Harlow was unconscious, oxygen-starved tissues sending his body into crisis. The heart attack, far more severe than his previous cardiac episodes, left doctors uncertain about his prospects for recovery. News of Howard's collapse spread quickly through financial circles, accelerating the decline in Harlow Enterprises stock. Trading was temporarily halted after shares plummeted 28% in a single morning. When the market reopened, the slide continued as investors fled what increasingly appeared to be a sinking ship. 3 days later, in the intensive care unit of New York Presbyterian Hospital, Howard regained consciousness to find his worst fears realized. On the television mounted on the wall opposite his bed, financial news reported that Phoenix Designs had acquired controlling interest in Harlow Enterprises through a combination of distressed stock purchases and debt acquisition. A nurse entered, checking his vital signs with professional efficiency. "You have a visitor, Mr. Harlow. The doctors have approved a brief meeting, provided you remain calm." Howard expected Vanessa, or perhaps Jack. Instead, Marcus Reed entered the room, dressed in an impeccable suit that symbolized his ascendance as effectively as Howard's hospital gown represented his fall. "You look terrible, Howard," Marcus observed, taking the chair beside the bed. "Though I'm told your prognosis is surprisingly positive, given the circumstances." Howard's voice emerged as a rasp. "Come to gloat in person?" "No," Marcus replied simply. "I came to inform you directly that the Harlow Enterprises board has called an emergency session for tomorrow morning. Given the change in controlling interest, they'll be voting on new leadership." "My company," Howard managed, anger briefly overcoming weakness. "Not anymore," Marcus countered, his tone matter-of-fact rather than triumphant. Phoenix Designs now controls 53% of voting shares through direct ownership and debt conversion options. The outcome of tomorrow's vote is a foregone conclusion. Howard's monitors beeped more rapidly as his heart rate increased. You manipulated the market, created artificial distress to devalue our stock. I simply revealed existing weaknesses, Marcus corrected. The regulatory investigation resulted from your own financial deceptions. The construction delays stemmed from your failure to secure proper access rights. The liquidity crisis emerged because you concealed your health issues from investors and lenders. I applied pressure, certainly, but the structural flaws were entirely your creation. Howard stared at him with undisguised hatred. You've destroyed everything I built. That's where you're wrong, Marcus replied, rising from his chair. I didn't destroy your empire, Howard. I simply built something better on the foundation of your mistakes. The fundamental difference between us is that you believed your success came from taking from others. I understand that sustainable value can only be created, not extracted. As Marcus turned to leave, Howard called after him, his voice weak but venomous. Vanessa will take you for everything. Community property laws, your new designs, your stake in my company, everything developed during your marriage. Marcus paused at the door. Interesting theory. You might want to discuss that with her before tomorrow's board meeting. You may find her position has evolved. Indeed, at that very moment, Vanessa sat in her attorney's office, listening with increasing distress as he explained the legal realities of her situation. The evidence of corporate espionage is substantial, the lawyer informed her gravely. Emails, recorded conversations, documented transfers of proprietary information, all accumulated during your marriage to Mr. Reed. Those materials were shared between husband and wife. Vanessa protested. There was no expectation of confidentiality. The attorney sighed. That might be persuasive if the information had remained between you and Mr. Reed. However, the systematic transfer of these materials to Bennett Development creates significant legal exposure, both civil and potentially criminal. Criminal? Vanessa repeated, paling. Industrial espionage can be prosecuted under several statutes, he confirmed, particularly when interstate commerce is involved, which it clearly was in this case. Vanessa sat back, absorbing the implications. Well, my options? Limited, her attorney admitted. Mr. Reed has offered a settlement that, frankly, is more generous than you might receive through litigation. Clean divorce, no financial claims against each other, mutual non-disclosure agreements, and perhaps most importantly, no criminal charges. In exchange for what? Vanessa asked, though she already suspected the answer. Your shares in Harlow Enterprises, voting by proxy in alignment with Phoenix Design's interests, and your testimony regarding the orchestrated theft of Mr. Reed's intellectual property. The reality of her position crystallized. Both her father and Jack had abandoned her, each blaming her for their current predicaments. Howard had suggested from his hospital bed that she fix the mess by leveraging her marriage to Marcus, while Jack had effectively disappeared, not returning her calls since his return from Dubai. I need to speak with Marcus, she decided. Directly, not through attorneys. The meeting was arranged for that afternoon at Marcus's Brooklyn apartment, neutral territory since he had moved from their former Manhattan residence. When Vanessa arrived, she found not only Marcus but also Diana Wells present, recording equipment visible on the coffee table. A precaution, Marcus explained, noting her glance toward the devices. Our conversations have a history of being selectively remembered. Vanessa nodded stiffly, taking the offered seat. You've been busy, she observed. Phoenix Designs, patent filings, debt acquisition. Quite the orchestrated revenge plot. Not revenge, Marcus corrected. Strategic repositioning. Though I understand why you might confuse the two, given your father's business philosophy. What do you want, Marcus? Vanessa asked directly. Beyond destroying everything my family built? Accountability, he replied simply. Your family didn't build. They acquired, extracted, and exploited. My interest is in transforming those assets into something genuinely valuable. By controlling Harlow Enterprises, by redirecting its resources towards sustainable development that serves communities rather than extracting from them, Marcus clarified. Your father's approach was fundamentally exploitative. Mine is regenerative. Vanessa studied him, searching for the man she had married. And where do I fit in this transformation? That depends on you, Marcus replied. You have knowledge, expertise, and perspective that could contribute value. But first, you need to acknowledge your role in what happened. You want a confession, Vanessa surmised, glancing at the recording equipment. I want the truth, Marcus countered. For once in our relationship, something in his tone, the genuine pain beneath the controlled exterior, reached her. Vanessa's carefully maintained facade cracked slightly. It wasn't all a lie, she said quietly. Not at the beginning. When did it change? Marcus asked. Vanessa sighed, the weight of years of deception suddenly unbearable. After the Chicago Commission, Father saw your potential, not just as an architect, but as a source of innovation his companies could exploit. He pressured me to facilitate access. And Jack, a complication, she admitted. Father always intended us to marry eventually. When I chose you instead, he adapted his strategy. Jack became the conduit for transferring your innovations to Bennett Development while maintaining our public marriage for appearance and access. As Vanessa continued speaking, she detailed the systematic theft of Marcus's designs, the coordination between Howard and Jack, the gradual evolution of her role from unwitting participant to active collaborator. The recording captured everything: dates, specific projects, methods of information transfer, patent applications. I knew it was wrong, she concluded, her voice hollow. But family loyalty is corrosive when misplaced. By the time I recognized what we were doing to you, I was already complicit. Marcus absorbed her confession with outward composure that belied his internal conflict. The woman he had loved, had built a life with, had betrayed him in the most intimate ways possible. Yet her acknowledgement offered a form of closure he hadn't anticipated. Your testimony will be valuable, he said finally, both in tomorrow's board meeting and in the regulatory investigations. The settlement offer stands, a clean break, no financial claims, no criminal charges. Vanessa nodded, recognizing the generosity in his position despite everything. And Father, Howard made his choices, Marcus replied. Each one brought him closer to this moment. The board will determine his future role in the company, though I expect it will be ceremonial at best. As Vanessa left the apartment, the weight of her decisions pressing down upon her, Marcus and Diana remained, the recording device still running. That's the final piece, Diana observed, stopping the recording. With Vanessa's testimony confirming the intellectual property theft, the Bennett Company won't survive the resulting legal actions. Indeed, Jack Bennett was at that moment facing his own reckoning. Federal investigators had arrived at Bennett Development headquarters with subpoenas for all records related to government-funded projects completed over the previous 5 years. The anonymous tip they had received, accompanied by internal documents showing systematic substitution of substandard materials, had triggered a full investigation into fraud against government contracts. Jack sat in the conference room as investigators collected servers and documents, his father beside him ashen-faced and silent. The Bennett family legacy, built over 3 generations, was collapsing before their eyes. How did he do it? Jack asked his father quietly. How did Reed orchestrate all of this simultaneously? The elder Bennett shook his head slowly. He didn't have to orchestrate everything. He simply identified our vulnerabilities and applied precise pressure. The rest was physics. Structures collapse when critical supports fail. As federal agents continued their work, Jack received a message from his attorney. Prosecutors offering reduced charges in exchange for testimony against Howard Harlow regarding coordinated intellectual property theft. Recommend serious consideration given evidence in their possession. The united front between the Harlow and Bennett families, maintained for decades through shared interests and mutual benefit, was fracturing under pressure. Self-preservation was replacing loyalty with each new development. The following morning, Marcus entered the Harlow Enterprises boardroom as majority shareholder representative. The board members, longtime Howard loyalists mixed with newer independent directors, watched with varying degrees of apprehension as he took the chairman's position at the head of the table. On a video screen mounted on the wall, Howard Harlow observed from his hospital bed, his diminished physical state a stark contrast to the dominant presence he had maintained in this room for 30 years. "This meeting will come to order," Marcus began, his voice calm and authoritative. "The agenda is straightforward. Given the change in controlling interest, we'll be voting on new executive leadership and strategic direction for Harlow Enterprises." "This is a hostile takeover," Howard interjected from the screen. "Nothing more than elaborate revenge." "No, Howard," Marcus replied evenly. "This is a necessary intervention to save a company that was failing due to fundamental flaws in its operational and ethical framework. Phoenix Designs acquired controlling interest legally through open market transactions when your company's stock price reflected its actual value rather than its artificially inflated one." The board listened as Marcus outlined the situation in clarity. The company's financial vulnerabilities, the regulatory issues, the stalled projects, and the path forward. He presented not just problems, but solutions, demonstrating a comprehensive understanding of the company's operations that impressed even Howard's most loyal supporters. When the vote came, it was unanimous save for Howard's single opposition. Marcus Reed was appointed CEO and chairman of Harlow Enterprises, with a mandate to restructure the company and resolve its operational challenges. "I didn't destroy your empire," Marcus told Howard as the meeting concluded. "I simply built something better on the foundation of your mistakes." As Howard's screen went dark, the architectural of Marcus's revenge came full circle. The man who had attempted to systematically dismantle Marcus's life and work now watched helplessly as his own carefully constructed reality collapsed around him. The demolition was complete. The reconstruction could begin. Chapter 8: The Reckoning. 6 months after assuming control of Harlow Enterprises, Marcus stood at the entrance of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, greeting guests arriving for the Foster Future Foundation Gala, an event supporting educational opportunities for children in the foster care system, with particular emphasis on architecture, engineering, and sustainable design. The guest list represented a strategic cross-section of New York's elite, financial leaders, real estate developers, media figures, and influential philanthropists. Among those invited were the entire Harlow family, their attendance secured through public expectations rather than personal inclination. Rachel Kirby joined Marcus at the entrance, elegant in a midnight blue gown that complemented his tuxedo. Their partnership had evolved beyond professional collaboration into something deeper, though neither had yet articulated the precise nature of their relationship. "The Harlow contingent just arrived," Rachel murmured, nodding toward the street where a black car had stopped. "Eleanor and Richard, but no Howard or Vanessa yet." "They'll come," Marcus replied confidently. "Howard won't risk the social implications of absence, regardless of personal feelings. His reputation is all he has left." Indeed, Howard Harlow appeared 30 minutes later, noticeably thinner and moving with the careful deliberation of someone recently recovered from a major health event. He entered alone, having been released from the hospital 2 months earlier to find his social standing significantly diminished alongside his corporate power. Vanessa arrived separately, no longer accompanied by Jack Bennett, whose legal troubles had rendered him socially toxic. The Bennett family company had collapsed under federal investigation, with Jack now negotiating a plea deal in exchange for testimony against former associates, including Howard. Eleanor Harlow greeted him with the practiced social grace that had defined her for decades. A remarkable turnout. The foundation must be gratified. "Very much so," Marcus agreed. "Education creates opportunities that transform lives. I'm living proof of that." Eleanor's gaze held genuine regret. "Yes, you are. I hope you know I never approved of how things developed." "I believe that," Marcus acknowledged, "though neither did you intervene." She accepted the implicit criticism with a slight nod. "Some failures can't be excused by context. I hope tonight represents a more constructive path forward for everyone." As Eleanor moved into the museum, Howard approached, his handshake noticeably weaker than the aggressive grip he had once employed. "Impressive event," Howard acknowledged grudgingly, though perhaps somewhat calculated in its guest list. Everything you taught me about strategic social engineering. Marcus replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The Harlow influence wasn't entirely negative. Howard's gaze hardened. You've won, Reed. Taken my company, damaged my reputation, destroyed Bennett development. Is public humiliation necessary as well? This isn't about humiliation, Howard, Marcus countered. It's about redirection of resources. The Foundation announcement later will make that clear. Vanessa arrived as Howard departed, creating a momentary awkward triangle before Howard continued into the museum without acknowledging his daughter. The estrangement between them had deepened as Vanessa's testimony proved instrumental in both the Harlow Enterprises takeover and the legal proceedings against Bennett Development. You look well, Marcus observed as Vanessa approached. Appearances can be deceiving, she replied with a hint of her old directness. As we both know, Rachel squeezed Marcus's arm lightly. I'll check on the presentation arrangements, she said, tactfully providing them a moment of privacy. Once alone, Vanessa spoke more candidly. I didn't expect an invitation. The Foundation's work benefits from broad support, Marcus replied. Your environmental expertise remains valuable, regardless of personal history. Vanessa studied him, searching for signs of the man she had married beneath the composed exterior he now presented. Is any of this satisfaction? Taking control of father's company, watching the Bennetts collapse, seeing our family divided? Not satisfaction, Marcus corrected. Realignment. Resources that were misused are being redirected toward constructive purposes. The announcement tonight will clarify that approach. The announcement, when it came after dinner, silenced the ballroom. Marcus stood at the podium, his presence commanding attention without artifice. The Foster Future Foundation is pleased to announce its most significant initiative to date, he began. Through a partnership with Harlow Enterprises, Phoenix Designs, and municipal housing authorities, we are launching the Adaptive Community Housing Project, a comprehensive program to convert failed commercial developments into affordable, sustainable housing communities across 5 cities. Screens around the ballroom displayed renderings of the housing concept Marcus and Rachel had developed. The award-winning design that had demonstrated the superiority of their approach over the stolen innovations Jack Bennett had attempted to implement. Each community will provide not just housing but educational facilities, green spaces, and entrepreneurial incubators, Marcus continued. And each building will bear the name of a foster child who never found a permanent home. A reminder that potential exists everywhere if given proper support. The assembled wealthy and powerful applauded with enthusiasm. Though Howard Harlow remained seated, his expression fixed in a mask of controlled neutrality. The properties Marcus had identified for conversion included several failed Harlow and Bennett developments, projects now under Harlow Enterprises' control through the changes Marcus had implemented. This represents not just architectural innovation, but social reconstruction, Marcus concluded, building communities that nurture potential rather than extract value, creating foundations that support rather than exploit. The symbolic rebuke to Howard's business philosophy couldn't have been clearer. As guests mingled following the announcement, Howard approached Marcus near one of the displays showing a Bennett development being transformed into a community center. A private word, Howard requested, his tone making it more demand than question. They moved to a quiet corner of the exhibit space, Howard's physical weakness belying the intensity of his gaze. Quite the moral victory lap, Howard observed bitterly. The foster boy reconstructing society while dismantling the evil empire that oppressed him. The narrative practically writes itself. You always did reduce everything to narrative and appearance, Marcus replied, which is why you never understood the fundamental flaw in your approach to business and life. Enlighten me, Howard challenged, sarcasm threading through his tone. You believed success required taking from others, Marcus explained simply. That every relationship was transactional, every interaction an opportunity for extraction rather than creation. It made you wealthy but fundamentally hollow, a man who built an empire with no actual foundation. Howard's laugh held no humor. Philosophical judgments from the man who systematically destroyed his enemies. Your revenge plot hardly suggests moral superiority. I didn't destroy you. Howard, Marcus corrected. I exposed the weaknesses in what you built and redirected resources toward more sustainable purposes. The distinction matters. Howard leaned closer, his voice lowering. You think you've won the moral high ground? That your hands are somehow cleaner than mine? I built my company from nothing. You built it by stealing your former partner's designs. Marcus interrupted, watching Howard's expression freeze. Edward Chambers, your Yale roommate who developed the foundation stabilization techniques that launched Harlow Construction. The partner who mysteriously disappeared from company records in 1978 after you claimed his innovations as your own. The color drained from Howard's face. How could you possibly? Chambers kept records, Marcus explained. His daughter preserved them, though she lacked resources to challenge her legal team. Diana found her during our investigation into your pattern of appropriating others' innovations. The difference between us, Howard, is that I built my success twice. First through my own work, then by reclaiming what was taken from me. Howard stared at him, decades of carefully maintained fiction crumbling beneath this final revelation. What do you want? Nothing more than I've already achieved, Marcus replied. The resources you controlled are now being directed toward constructive purposes. Your legacy is being redefined. Justice, however delayed, is being served. As Howard departed the gala shortly afterward, visibly shaken by the conversation, Vanessa approached Marcus with determination in her stride. She had observed the exchange with her father from across the room, noting Howard's uncharacteristic defeat. What did you say to him? She asked without preamble. The truth, Marcus replied. Something your family has had limited experience with. Vanessa's expression tightened. I've lost everything, Marcus. My marriage, my family relationships, my social standing, my financial security. Isn't that enough? You haven't lost everything, Marcus countered. You've lost things that were built on falsehood. You retain your education, your expertise, your fundamental capabilities. The difference is significant. How philosophical, Vanessa observed bitterly. Easy to frame loss as opportunity when you're not experiencing it. I experienced it when you and your father orchestrated the theft of my life's work, Marcus reminded her, his composure momentarily slipping to reveal the hurt beneath. When my marriage proved to be an elaborate deception designed to extract value rather than create it. Vanessa flinched at the directness of his assessment. It wasn't all deception. Not at the beginning. Perhaps not, Marcus acknowledged. But it became that, a strategic alliance rather than a partnership. The distinction matters, Vanessa. And what now? She asked. Now that you've won, what happens to me? Some of those designs you're implementing through Harlow Enterprises evolved from our discussions. My environmental expertise contributed to your innovations. Are you suggesting ownership claims? Marcus asked, his tone sharpening. After Diana documented your systematic transfer of proprietary information to Jack and Howard, Vanessa hesitated, recognizing the dangerous territory she approached. I'm suggesting that our marriage created joint intellectual assets, regardless of subsequent events. The courts will find that argument unpersuasive, Marcus replied, particularly with your recorded admission of industrial espionage and the evidence of coordinated theft. But more importantly, Rachel has provided affidavits regarding your attempts to access our current designs through mutual acquaintances. The revelation struck Vanessa visibly. Rachel, you approached Justin Miller at the Environmental Design Institute last month, Marcus explained. Requested access to our current project files under the pretense of potential collaboration. Rachel was present for the conversation, though you didn't notice her. Vanessa's carefully constructed position collapsed under this final revelation. Her shoulders sagged slightly as the futility of her approach became clear. I have nothing left, she said quietly. You have opportunities to rebuild, Marcus corrected. Not through legal maneuvers or manipulation, but through genuine contribution. The foundation can use environmental science expertise for the housing initiatives. It will be project-based work, carefully supervised, but meaningful. The offer, employment rather than reconciliation, monitored contribution rather than trust, defined the boundaries of what remained possible between them. Vanessa recognized it as both opportunity and judgment, a path forward that acknowledged her capabilities while establishing permanent limitations based on her choices. "I'll consider it," she said finally. As the gala continued around them, news arrived that added final punctuation to the evening. Jack Bennett had been detained at JFK Airport attempting to board a flight to Sao Paulo, a jurisdiction without extradition for the financial crimes he faced. His passport had been flagged, his escape prevented. More significantly, in a desperate attempt to secure leniency, Jack had offered comprehensive testimony against Howard Harlow, detailing years of coordinated intellectual property theft, market manipulation, and regulatory violations. The united front that had once targeted Marcus had disintegrated completely, former co-conspirators now turning against each other in desperate self-preservation. The reckoning wasn't simply financial or legal, but fundamental. The collapse of a system built on extraction rather than creation, manipulation rather than contribution. As the evening concluded, Marcus stood with Rachel, Samuel, Diana, and Grace Winters, the core group who had supported his journey from victim to architect of justice. "It's actually happening," Grace observed, indicating the displays showing the housing communities that would soon begin construction. "Not just revenge, but genuine transformation." "That was always the goal," Marcus confirmed. "Not destroying what they built, but rebuilding something better in its place." The group's shared satisfaction went beyond vindication to something more meaningful. The recognition that systems built on exploitation contained inherent weaknesses that made them vulnerable to precisely the pressure Marcus had applied. The reckoning wasn't just for Howard, Jack, and Vanessa, but for the approach to success they had embodied, an approach now being systematically replaced with something more sustainable, more equitable, and ultimately stronger. Chapter 9. Reconstruction. 1 year later, a modest crowd gathered outside a renovated building in Brooklyn that had once been an abandoned community center. The structure, now transformed with sustainable materials, solar panels, and vertical gardens, represented the first completed project of the Foster Future Foundation's community initiative. Marcus stood before the gathered community members, foster care advocates, and media representatives, his expression reflecting genuine satisfaction rather than the calculated public persona Howard Harlow had perfected over decades. "Today we officially opened the Reed Community Center," Marcus announced, a place providing support, education, and opportunity for foster children and families in crisis. This center represents not just architectural renovation, but community restoration, creating spaces where potential can flourish regardless of circumstance. Behind him, the building's transformation was apparent. The institutional grimness replaced by natural light, flexible spaces, and living systems that made the structure feel alive rather than merely functional. Inside, classrooms, counseling spaces, technology labs, and community gathering areas awaited the children and families the center would serve. Diana Wells stood near the entrance, overseeing the security team she had assembled to ensure the center remained a safe haven for vulnerable youth. Her expertise, once focused on exposing deception, now protected those rebuilding their lives after trauma. Samuel Chun had established the center's technology program, creating a curriculum that would teach coding, cybersecurity, and digital skills to underprivileged youth. His own journey from foster child to successful professional served as powerful inspiration for the students they would soon welcome. After the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Marcus led tours through the facility, explaining the sustainable systems and community center design principles to visitors. The center embodied the approach he and Rachel had developed: architecture that served human needs while regenerating rather than depleting environmental resources. Later that afternoon, Marcus received word of another significant development. Howard Harlow, continuing his social decline since losing control of his company, had received a final symbolic blow. The Greenwich Country Club, the exclusive enclave where Howard had held membership for 30 years and served on the board, had revoked his membership following his indictment on financial fraud charges. More surprisingly, the club had extended an invitation to Marcus Reed, citing his contributions to sustainable development and community service as qualifying factors for membership. The invitation represented a fundamental shift in how success and status were being redefined in the very social circles Howard had once dominated. Marcus drafted a polite decline, suggesting the club consider Rachel Kirby instead, a recommendation that deliberately challenged the club's historically limited diversity. His interest wasn't in joining institutions that had excluded people like him for generations, but in transforming how such institutions functioned and who they served. That evening, as Marcus worked late at the community center, finalizing details for the next day's youth program launch, his assistant informed him that Vanessa had arrived requesting a brief meeting. Since the gala 6 months earlier, Vanessa had accepted limited consulting work with the foundation, her environmental expertise contributing to the sustainability systems implemented in their housing projects. She entered his office with the composed dignity that had always characterized her public persona, though her designer clothes had been replaced by more modest attire reflecting her changed circumstances. Howard had cut her off financially after her testimony proved instrumental in the regulatory actions against him, forcing Vanessa to support herself for the first time. "The center is remarkable," she observed, glancing around the office where living plants integrated with the architectural elements. "The transformation from what it was. That's the core principle," Marcus agreed. "Potential exists in people and places others have discarded. The right support reveals it." Vanessa placed a folder on his desk. "The sustainability assessment for the Chicago housing project. The solar integration modifications should increase efficiency by 23%. "Thank you," Marcus acknowledged, accepting the folder. "Your input has been valuable to the project." Vanessa hesitated, clearly having more to say beyond the professional exchange. "I wanted to tell you personally that I'm relocating to Seattle next month. The Environmental Institute offered me a research position focusing on urban ecosystem management." "Congratulations," Marcus said, genuine in his acknowledgement of her professional achievement. "It's good work that will utilize your expertise." "It's a fresh start," Vanessa added. "Away from New York, away from the Harlow name and all its current associations." The subtext was clear, away from the daily reminders of what she had lost, what she had participated in, and the consequences that continued to unfold. Howard now faced federal charges, his reputation destroyed, his financial empire reduced to what remained of Harlow Enterprises under Marcus's leadership. "I owe you an apology," Vanessa said finally, meeting his gaze directly. "A real one, not a strategic repositioning. What I participated in, was wrong. Fundamentally wrong. I understand that now in ways I couldn't or wouldn't before." Marcus studied her, searching for signs of manipulation and finding instead genuine regret. "What changed your perspective?" "Working on the foundation projects," Vanessa admitted. "Seeing what's possible when resources serve communities rather than extracting from them. Recognizing that Father's approach, the approach I adopted, created wealth but not value. The distinction matters, as you once told me." The echo of his own words reflected a genuine evolution in her thinking. Marcus acknowledged it with a nod. "I appreciate your apology. I hope Seattle offers what you're seeking." "It offers distance and possibility," Vanessa replied, "though not absolution." "That isn't possible, I understand." "Absolution isn't necessary for growth," Marcus observed. "Accountability is. You've begun taking responsibility for your choices. That's its own form of reconstruction." As Vanessa prepared to leave, she paused at the door. "The community center, it's what you always wanted to build, isn't it? Even before all this happened." "Parts of it," Marcus acknowledged. "The integration of community needs with sustainable systems. The focus on potential rather than profit. The rest evolved through experience, both positive and negative." "It's a worthy legacy," Vanessa offered. "Better than what my family built." After she departed, Marcus reflected on the interaction, the closing of one chapter that allowed others to begin. Their paths would not cross again in any meaningful way, the connection between them permanently altered by the choices each had made. Meanwhile, in a federal detention center awaiting sentencing, Jack Bennett received notification of his assignment to a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania. The final irony awaited him in the details. The facility had recently been renovated under a federal contract awarded to Reed Sustainable Design, Marcus's new firm established after separating the architectural division from Harlow Enterprises. The prison where Jack would serve his reduced sentence included humanizing elements absent from most correctional facilities: natural light, communal spaces designed to reduce conflict, and environmental systems that reduce the institutional atmosphere. Even in punishment, Marcus's approach to design reflected his fundamental belief that environments shape behavior and opportunity. When Jack arrived at the facility 2 weeks later, the knowledge that his confinement would take place in a space designed by the man whose work he had stolen added final punctuation to his downfall. The Bennett family legacy, 3 generations of development expertise, had collapsed completely, with Jack's father retreating to Florida in disgrace and the company's assets liquidated to satisfy creditors and legal judgments. That same evening, Marcus hosted a rooftop gathering at the newly completed Phoenix Designs headquarters, a renovated industrial building transformed into a showcase for sustainable urban adaptation. The small group assembled represented Marcus's chosen family: Diana, Samuel, Rachel, Grace Winters, and Veronica Nash, whose city council influence had helped secure approval for their community projects. As the sun set over the city, Marcus raised a glass and toast to foundations that support rather than exploit, systems that create rather than extract, and connections that strengthen rather than manipulate. The group responded with genuine warmth, their shared journey creating bonds that transcended conventional relationships. They had collectively transformed crisis into opportunity, betrayal into reconstruction, damage into renewal. As conversations flowed around the rooftop garden, Marcus drew Rachel aside to a quiet corner overlooking the Brooklyn skyline. Their professional partnership had evolved over the past 18 months into something deeper, a connection built on shared values, mutual respect, and genuine understanding. "I have something for you," Marcus said, retrieving a small box from his pocket. "Not jewelry, at least not primarily." Rachel opened the box to find a key attached to a simple silver ring. Her questioning glance prompted Marcus to explain. "The key is to a property I've acquired in Massachusetts," he elaborated. 40 acres with an existing structure that could be renovated into something remarkable, a demonstration site for our integrated housing and agriculture systems, with space for both work and life. The implication was clear: not just a professional opportunity, but a personal one. A shared space that could be both laboratory and home, a place to develop their partnership in all its dimensions. "Are you proposing a demonstration project or a life together?" Rachel asked directly, her characteristic clarity cutting to the core question. "Both," Marcus confirmed. "The integration seems appropriate, given our approach to design. Systems that support each other create sustainable outcomes." Rachel smiled, appreciating the architectural metaphor for their relationship. "Most women might prefer a more conventional proposal." "Most women aren't you," Marcus countered. "Our connection has always involved building something meaningful together. This is simply the next phase of that construction." She slipped the ring onto her finger, the key resting against her palm. "I accept both proposals, the project and the partnership." Their kiss sealed the agreement, witnessed by the chosen family who had supported Marcus through destruction and rebuilding. The revenge that Howard had feared proved ultimately less significant than the reconstruction it enabled: personal, professional, and communal. 2 days later, Marcus visited his childhood foster home in Queens, a modest house now renovated into a transition home for aging-out foster youth through foundation funding. The structure retained its original character while incorporating sustainable systems and communal spaces that supported residents preparing for independent living. As he walked through the space where he had once lived as a displaced child, Marcus noticed a teenage girl sitting at a table in the common area, bent over architectural sketches with intense concentration. Her drawings, crude but showing natural talent, depicted a community space with integrated green elements. "That's an interesting approach," Marcus observed, pausing beside her. The central courtyard creates natural gathering spaces while providing environmental benefits. The girl looked up, initially defensive until recognition dawned. "You're Marcus Reed," she identified. "From the Foundation." "I am," he confirmed. "Those are impressive conceptual drawings." "They're just ideas," she said, shrugging with the practiced nonchalance teenagers often adopt to protect themselves from disappointment. "Not like real architecture. All architecture begins as just ideas," Marcus countered, pulling up a chair. "May I?" He gestured toward her sketches. The girl, Amara, according to the name written on her drawings, nodded cautiously. Marcus spent the next hour reviewing her work, offering suggestions and encouragement, recognizing in her raw talent a reflection of his own early passion for design. "Have you considered architecture as a career?" he asked as their impromptu session concluded. "Foster kids don't become architects," Amara replied with blunt practicality. "College costs money. Besides, who'd hire me?" The echo of his own early doubts resonated deeply. "I was a foster child," Marcus told her. "Lived in this house. Actually, though it looked very different then. Now I design buildings that change how communities function." Amara's skepticism faltered slightly. "For real? You lived here?" "Room upstairs, second door on the left," Marcus confirmed. "The foundation has scholarship programs specifically for foster youth interested in design fields. Your talent deserves development." As he left her with information about educational opportunities and an invitation to visit the community center's design lab, Marcus recognized the completion of a circle, not just his personal journey from victim to victor, but the creation of pathways for others facing similar challenges. The true revenge against Howard Harlow wasn't the man's financial and social downfall, but the fundamental redirection of resources he had controlled toward purposes he had never valued. The transformation of extraction into creation, competition into collaboration, and damage into renewal represented Marcus's ultimate architectural achievement. The foster child who had once been dismissed as beneath the Harlow family's social status had not only survived their attempted destruction, but reconstructed something far more valuable from the components they had attempted to control. The architect of deception had become the architect of regeneration, building systems designed not for personal gain, but for communal flourishing. As Marcus watched Amara return to her drawings with renewed purpose, he understood that his greatest design wasn't a building or even a company, but the creation of possibilities that couldn't be stolen, dreams passed forward to a new generation who would build upon foundations he had established, but could evolve in directions he couldn't predict. The final blueprint wasn't for revenge, but for renewal, applied not to destruction, but to creation of spaces, systems, and opportunities that would outlast any individual designer, growing and adapting long after their original creator had moved on to new projects. The demolition was complete. The reconstruction would continue indefinitely. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.